Rain. Good night.
Check. Check, check. That seems very loud.
Hi, Billy. I see you online. Can you please confirm you can hear us from in the room?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. I will be chairing this meeting from home tonight. And Tanya and myself are online, and it looks like there are 4 trustees in the room or 5.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, we have 5.
Okay, cool. So go ahead. So welcome everyone. It's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the February 4th open BOT meeting. Macy, could you make a roll call?
Yes, it's 7 p.m. Do we have Mayor Billy?
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling?
Here.
Trustee Corvalon?
Tanya, it looks like you're trying to talk. All we hear is a buzz. We can't hear your voice at all.
I can come back to Trustee Corvalon. I have Trustee Larson.
Here.
Trustee Maris.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Ty.
Here.
Thank you. And do we have Trustee Corvalon?
Tanya, you might try logging out and logging back in. There you go. Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody. With that, we'll go ahead and go into our consent agenda. We have 4 items on consent agenda. Is there any questions on the consent agenda for Jonathan?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and second, Macy?
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling?
Yes.
Trustee Larson?
Yes.
Trustee Maris?
Yes.
Mayor Billy?
Yes.
Trustee Ty?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yep.
And Trustee Corvalon? I'm not sure if she has joined us again yet.
She has not joined us yet. So.
Okay, so we'll note for the record that Trustee Corvalon was not present for the vote on the consent agenda.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Okay, well, with that, we'll move into our first information item of the evening, the comprehensive plan update. John?
Well, Mayor and Board, we have been working on the comprehensive plan since you last saw it. The last time we talked about this, we were talking about sending it back for a draft to make sure that the language was really aligned to Nederland and to correct some things that had come up during the conversation with Planning Commission and with the Board of Trustees. So that work has been done. Planning Commission has reviewed it, and we think we are very close to a final draft of the document. Just a couple notes about what this includes. It's got a sub-area plan for downtown Nederland and then several sections that talk about the different priorities of the town. Just a little bit of background about how comp plans work. They are a document of the Planning Commission. The state statute specifically says that the Planning Commission has the ability to adopt a comprehensive plan, and it's used for guiding land use and infrastructure decisions. It's important to note it's not like a regulatory document like an ordinance, but kind of a suggestion that guides our work over the next 10 years. There's been some updates to what comp plans do at the state level, and it's probably likely that we'll need to update this before 10 years, but that's kind of how it has worked in the past. In my staff report, I talk about the public engagement for this plan. Over the last year, there's been a lot. It started with the visioning opening house in January of 2024. There was an online community survey. There's been focus groups and stakeholder meetings from everything from downtown to recreation and things like that. There was a community meeting in September of 2024, and then there have been a few public work sessions since, both Planning Commission and Board of Trustees. These engagement efforts really did a good job of talking about the different themes that are important to Nederland right now, and I think that you'll see them in the comp plan. Some of the really big things that came from the feedback are a desire for balanced growth in Nederland. It's really important to maintain Nederland's character while allowing for thoughtful development. There's strong support for the sustainability initiatives that you see in the last comprehensive plan, although in this comprehensive plan, they've really moved into a resiliency framework. You see concerns about housing affordability and looking at how we might be able to provide more affordable and diverse housing options. There's a desire for transportation and infrastructure improvements. This plan was done concurrently with the multimodal plan, and so they were kind of informed by each other. And then finally, and most importantly, preserving Nederland's unique identity. Through this process, the SE group, which is our consultants who are online to talk about this plan tonight, they have worked through all of our past planning efforts, including Vision 2030, to really make sure that the principles are reflected in this plan. The big policy issues are environmental sustainability, economic resilience, infrastructure adaptation, and community preparedness. The role for the Board of Trustees, I just wanted to kind of mention, we brought this to you tonight because the Planning Commission is getting to the point where they're ready to have their hearing in February to adopt the plan. And we suggest that the board might consider adopting a formal resolution of support of the adoption of the comprehensive plan, just to kind of indicate that the Planning Commission and the board are aligned with the priorities. We think that this plan will set the good basis for us to incorporate its goals into our budgeting and policy decisions that we make. Our strategic planning effort is coming up, and it will inform that, as well as how we think about our budget moving forward. This new resiliency framework that's been developed will allow us to continue to adapt to the different environmental, economic, and infrastructure challenges that we face in the future, while kind of remaining true to that sustainability vision that we have expressed in the last plan. I think that's kind of the really big things. We want to make sure that this public engagement process stays open as well as we kind of work into the implementation of this plan. As far as next steps go, Planning Commission will be conducting a formal hearing in February, and they'll be considering adoption of this plan. If it is adopted in March of 2025, we'd like to bring the plan back to you to see if we can pass a resolution of support for their action to approve the plan. And then in spring of 2025, we'll start our strategic planning effort to align our work over the next 2 years to the comprehensive plan. There will be ongoing public engagement as we move forward in all of these initiatives and projects. They all require community engagement and making sure that we get, just to make sure we're getting things done the correct way. And then we're going to want to really think about the cycle of review. And right now I suggest a 5-year cycle just to make sure we stay current and responsive, but that could change depending on what happens at the state level. Attached to my staff report, you had a comprehensive plan draft. We have a couple of people here tonight to talk to you, Roger and Jim from the Planning Commission. Jim is the new chair of the Planning Commission, are here to answer your questions about it. And we've also got SE group representation online to give a brief presentation about the plan. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, or we can let the team here show you what they've done.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So is there any clarifying questions for John before we go into letting the SE group for that?
I think you can go ahead, Mayor Billy.
All right, Gabby, if you all want to get started with your presentation.
I think Aiden's actually going to show the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions as well. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Aiden Eichhoff here with Gabby Buller from SE Group. Thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction. It was a good reminder of where this all came from. I just jotted down in my notes here that we started this process back in October, November of 2023. And so what you're looking at and what you reviewed before this meeting is over a year of research and planning, community engagement, staff coordination, stakeholder coordination, and in general, a rough estimate is about 300 to 400 community touch points throughout those. So certainly some of those could be from the same people, but looking at the surveys and focus groups, the downtown development or downtown sub-area plan, all of that, about 300 to 400 points of engagement throughout this process. I'm going to share a pretty brief presentation that goes through the highlights of how we were looking at developing this plan, what has changed since the October draft, and then do a brief recap of the downtown sub-area plan. Okie dokie. So I just spun through a lot of this, and I know I'm not sure exactly what your screen size is. So if you want me to read anything, let me know. But otherwise, I'll just talk through this presentation. So as John mentioned, community open house in January got us all the way through to a draft plan presentation in October, which I know a few of you were at. We went through and basically had stakeholder meetings and focus groups following each general chapter area. And after that draft plan presentation, as John laid out, Planning Commission, Board of Trustees meeting, which is tonight, and then eventually go through the steps for plan adoption. I should also mention, as John did, that we were in coordination with Fair and Peers throughout this planning process with the mobility plan and with Cheney Bostic of Studio Seed for the downtown sub-area plan. So those three planning processes were very much happening in tandem, and we had several meetings to make sure that everyone was on the same page. Okay, so overall plan structure, we went for a little bit more of what we would call a traditional comprehensive plan that breaks down the topic areas by chapter versus having a more thematic plan that might talk about growth, and that could involve things like land use and housing. So we did this to make it fairly straightforward to understand which chapter you needed to go to get information, but we made sure that in the implementation matrix at the end of the document, you can kind of see how these different chapters might overlap and interact with each other. So each chapter follows a very similar structure: existing conditions and key issues, goes through an engagement summary, and then has a vision statement. These ones were very, very similar to the Vision 2030 vision statements, and we went through those again with the community. And then I think for one or two chapters, we did have to come up with our own just because it wasn't part of the Vision 2030 document. We then sorted all the recommendations into objectives and strategies. In previous versions, this was objectives, strategies, and actions, but we made sure, and you'll see in our feedback later, that we wanted to lean a little bit more on strategies versus having sort of assignments or checklists that felt more binding. So there's still very clear strategies, still things to move forward on, but just not as maybe harsh of a tone as actions. So since 2013, John mentioned previously, going from that sustainability lens, which focused a lot around energy efficiency and waste reduction, to more of a resilience framework. So all those are still in there, but thinking more holistically about resilience and net, and making sure that there's hazard mitigation and self-sufficiency really baked into this planning document. As I went through just that past slide with all the chapter breakdown, we're really trying to make this very clear for people to know where they need to go for the information they're looking for. So organizing it by topic area versus theme, and then having strategies with the short-term, mid-term, and long-term buckets. There was a lot of feedback when we first started this project that made it sound that the 2013 plan was a little bit more wishy-washy and didn't have as clear of direction. And we really made sure in this planning document to get rid of that and have clear strategies, not actions, but clear strategies that the town can take on that didn't compete with one another. A lot has changed
Real
since
quick.
Oh yeah,
real
Billy,
quick,
go for it.
Thanks. Can you articulate why there's a drive away from action to strategies? I just want that to be made clear.
Yeah. We heard from Planning Commission and some of the board representatives that it felt that when we had, let's say, like 10 actions in a specific chapter, that it felt that for there to be success, that it felt like we needed to check off every single one of those actions. And I think by saying strategies, you can say that, if you complete 2 or 3 of them, you're still getting towards your overall objective without feeling like, we didn't hit our mark because we didn't hit all of these. So there was very few sort of semantic changes that said like, conduct a feasibility study, and we changed that to explore a feasibility study so that it's still there in essence, but just the language around it is slightly softer.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that for now.
Yep. So yeah, in the last 10 to 12 years, thinking about statewide and national and even local planning trends that we're looking at and considering. I won't read through all of these, but especially from the statewide perspective, a big push on water conservation and protection, wildfire mitigation as well. That is in the whole town is in a high fire risk zone. Looking at both of those and how they funnel into this resilience framework. Focus on housing, that's mentioned quite a bit, and a lot of the strategies and objectives focus on housing. And then equity and climate change. So we did look at things like where recreation assets are placed. Thankfully, Ned is fairly small, so the town has, fairly high levels of access to things like recreation and the outdoors. But when we think about things like housing and core services and connectivity and transportation, how can we increase accessibility in that lens? So we don't need to go through this, but resilience framework, this has 4 main components that focus on the different aspects of resiliency: health and well-being, economy and society, infrastructure and ecosystems, and leadership and strategy. These are outlined in the introductory chapter of the plan, and then you'll see that each objective or strategy, I think each objective has connections to each of these resilience frameworks. So you'll see that there are, very intentional connections throughout the document to resilience in its many components. Okay, so what have we done since the October draft? So especially in the introduction, I think the word I use with John is that a little bit felt like a book report and just, going through the stats, the history. And so we adapted that language to be a little bit more, have a little bit more of like a welcoming tone in the introduction and get people on board with why we're doing this and what it has to play in making Ned the place that we want Ned to be. So try to make it feel a little bit more Ned. The introduction now speaks a little bit more to Nederland's values. It was noted in the October version that the existing condition sections were just pretty lengthy. And so we have all that information in memos that will be handed over to the town as part of our final project transfer. But there's still relevant existing conditions information in each chapter, but just not quite the 5 pages that it was before. As I mentioned, softened actions a little bit to strategies to make sure that we weren't necessarily having assignments. Clarifying, this is a big thing that the Planning Commission and our team worked on, but making sure that just because we said that these are vacant parcels throughout the town, that it wasn't being communicated that these have potential for development, that they're, potentially opportunities, but we need to do more work to make sure that we understand the legal encumbrances on the land to see if they're actually available for development. We adapted the housing chapter to focus more on local partnerships versus partnerships with Boulder County, knowing that the Regional Housing Authority will play a really strong role in making sure that housing solutions are tailored to the peak-to-peak region and NED's needs. And then finally, clarifying the purpose of the future land use map to make sure that people didn't feel, again, that it was sort of an assignment for future zoning. So those are the key changes. I'm happy to stop there and take feedback for a second if there are other things that popped into mind on feedback, but otherwise we can keep on moving and get to those at the end.
Yes, let's keep going.
Perfect. Okay, so recap really quickly of the downtown sub area plan. As you know, Cheney Bostic could not be here this evening, but she has really, really enjoyed working on this project, and it's definitely one of her favorite communities. So just passing that along. So downtown sub area plan. A big part of the first part of this project was determining what the study area would be and what people would determine as the downtown. So this red outline generally shows what is being considered for study here, not necessarily to say that this is exactly your downtown, but the area that was studied as part of this sub-area plan. So this big red blob here was broken into 5 or 6 character areas that each have specific guidance in the sub-area plan. So we also did engagement, existing conditions for people throughout the engagement to understand what people enjoyed and what they would like to change. A big part of this you can see in bigger letters was a lot on transportation and connectivity. So things like sidewalks and parking, accessibility, ideas of a parking garage. And that, again, is something that Farron Piers and Cheney focused on a lot together. So we have these 2 slides that talk about the major recommendation buckets. I know this is in your packet, so we can zip on through here. But looking at economic development and housing, ways to both stabilize existing and attract new businesses, establishing a first street overlay so that the character and things like design and lighting can be modified for just that one specific zone. And then encouraging protection of historic assets to make sure that NED, the character of NED, continues to be the character of NED. Lastly, on this slide, looking at a lot of the transportation, you see these buckets have a lot more information in them, but the circulation, gateways, and parking. So how can we adapt that first roundabout, some of the turns, some of the sidewalks, some of the crosswalks, to just encourage efficient transportation around town, get more people from the lakefront area up to downtown, think about events. And then finally, this placemaking, rec, and tourism one kind of brings that all together. So making sure that downtown is an attractive place that people want to spend time and money in. So that is our quick run through of those 2 planning documents. Thank you all. I also noted that, halfway through this project, we had a lot of board turnover, planning commission turnover. John, you jumped on, and I just feel that this whole group put a lot of effort into making that a smooth transition, and we really appreciate that effort.
There's one more change you didn't talk about. You did add Miranda to the project list of people.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. She is in the acknowledgements.
Who is that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We added Miranda's name to the acknowledgements.
Oh, cool. Thank you. What clarifying questions do we have for SC Group?
This is Tanya. I have I have a lot of questions, but I don't know if this is appropriate or not for the timing for the questions.
Well, it could be. I mean, we're going to have public comment yet, but no, actually, we're not. This is an information item. So I'd say this is a good time for your questions, especially if they're geared. Well,
I mean, I read the
especially if they're
draft.
for the consultant. What's that?
I read the draft, so I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a lot of difference in the final version. I haven't been able to really locate that on Engage. I just saw a short PowerPoint version up there. Well, I have a lot of comments. One about the off-street parking to reduce that requirement. I'm wondering if you guys are aware that there's a lot of no parking on town streets and a lot of town right away that's used for public parking that would create a real problem for a resident where they wouldn't be able to find parking easily near their home if they were living in downtown, if they were living in certain neighborhoods are not allowed to park on the street, town streets, because for plowing and because the streets are narrow. So I'm wondering why, what would you suggest for a person who has a 3-bedroom home, but there's only 1.5 parking spots, but there's 4 cars in that house? How's that going to work? I just don't think that's a good suggestion. What were you guys thinking?
Tony, can you let me know if that was in the comprehensive plan or the downtown sub area plan? Which
Well, that was in
section
the comprehensive plan. I read the draft today.
of plan?
It's page 27 on revise off-street parking requirements, explore reducing off-street parking minimums.
And you have a chart like of how it is and how you would want it to be basically having it. And I think it's a role that's certainly would be happy. A developer would be happy to see that because then they could develop more of the lot, but that's not going to help the residents. And so, that's to me, I don't think that's a good suggestion. And my problem with the comprehensive plan is that anything in there becomes fair game for future boards to grab onto. And I'm worried that is just going to be a boon for developers and not really that great for people who actually live in these apartments and houses because they're going to have to walk in the dark to their house. So, I mean, where were you thinking people were going to park?
Yeah, so I can speak a bit to that. I know that parking minimums can reduce the likelihood that development of housing will happen. And so looking at a community that desperately needs housing, that is a tool in the toolbox. I think it needs to be paired with things like sidewalks and transit and connectivity so that you don't have to have 4 people in a home that have 4 individual vehicles. But agreed, Tanya, that if we had places, especially for, winter, off street, you can leave your car there and go grab it when you need to. That is a way that you can sort of mix and match those solutions. But it would need to be, considered in specific zones for sure.
Yeah, most people in Irvine have to have a car because of where we live. We don't, but of course, not everybody has one. So that's also the just cause eviction. I was wondering if you could extrapolate on that because a lot of people I know who own long-term rentals are getting really scared with some of the tenant laws regarding eviction, making it harder and harder for them to evict, where they're saying, well, they're too scared to long-term rent now. They'd rather just keep the house empty. What is just cause eviction and has that been implemented in other towns?
I know it has been implemented in other towns. I'm not super familiar with the specifics of that policy. Gabby, do you happen to know the specifics there?
Hi there. We can look into, I guess I'm curious, like what your more specific concern is.
Well,
I think
it's one of the suggestions in the draft, and I'm just concerned that it's actually going to deter people from long-term renting. Homeowners who might consider long-term renting, that making it harder to evict people for just, isn't it I'm asking you, what is just cause eviction is what I'm asking. Because what I've been hearing from homeowners who have been considering long-term renting, that it's very difficult to evict people. It takes, half a year at least. And usually because they're not paying their rent. Just cause, what is it? Is that going to help the homeowner or does it help the tenant? I'm asking you a question.
Yeah. No, it is more on the tenant tenants' rights side of things. And I'm going to put the paragraph from the document, especially if you were looking at a previous, just like the PowerPoint that just said,
No, I was looking at
one.
the draft that's on the agenda here. I don't know what that version is, but.
Okay, well, I will send the paragraph from the chapter that explains what that is and why it's being suggested.
And it's just one of many strategies that we could employ.
Right.
It's
It's
not
not saying that
No.
you have to do it.
Right.
I think like one of the reasons we included it was to balance. There's so many more renters these days because the cost of home ownership is so high. And so I think we wanted to include some strategies to protect renters. But I think, we're not recommending in the plan that you have to implement this. We're saying you could explore this as an option, considering that you have a higher proportion of renters due to the higher cost of home ownership. But if additional explanation or a link to understanding what just cause eviction is in the plan to help the reader understand that, like we're happy to provide that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mhm.
Then moving along into the recreation area, I just don't understand why there's been no mention of the ice rink and all the needs, ice and tennis up there. There's a lot of the rink has a huge potential in the next 10 years for becoming something great, or it could not. It depends on if the town wants to focus on it or not. And
Mhm.
my concern, if it's not mentioned in the comprehensive plan, is that future boards, I've had this happen to me many times where they're like, it's not in the comp plan, so that means we can't pursue it. And I think it's really important that the rink gets put in the ice plan. I'm wondering why you guys didn't put it in there.
So it certainly was not intentionally left out. That likely means that it wasn't something that came up in community engagement or engagement with the Parks and Rec ProSab board. I do know that when we were talking with them, we had fairly low participation and that they were also going through just starting their Parks and Rec master plan. So hopefully it would come up in that document, but it did not come up in our engagement.
Well, I would like, hopefully that you guys could add a paragraph about it, just so that future
Yeah.
boards can see
I
this.
think we could mention the ice rink and make sure that there's some mention of, existing facilities and or future thoughts about the ice rink. So we're happy to include that.
And
Thank you very much.
hey, Tanya, just
Yeah.
for giggles, if Jim, do you have any comment on that? As it was the ice rink not being included in there?
It wasn't something that came up. This was more, we're looking at this, I'll be honest with you, we focused the majority of our information on land use and housing as our main priorities for this. We kind of look at this as more of a roadmap that, is not saying, these are specific, you have to follow all these. These are strategies and a roadmap of how we get to our priorities. Everything's going to come down to the BOT using this to detail specific actions. So this would be something that, just because it's not in there, I don't believe that, the BOT couldn't say, we want to make that a focus. I mean, this is a 10-year plan. And so, this is more of an overarching, roadmap of strategies. But I personally, as we looked at it, we didn't look at it as, that was the main reason why we wanted to take it away from actions and soften the language to recommendations and things like that, because we don't want to tie anybody's hands. We don't want the community members to show up and say, beat you over the head and say, you haven't done X, Y, Z that you said you were going to do in the comp plan. These are basically a large group of ideas that we've gotten a lot of community feedback. We've gotten public presentations, and then between the BOT and the Planning Commission, this is basically an overall document. You're never going to get every single thing you want in here, and then if you did, then what's going to happen is people are going to come back in 3 years and they're going to say, how come you haven't done this yet? So I think it's more of a way that we looked at it as this we're overarching strategies on how we can continue to get where we're going as a community, but the fine details are going to come down to the BOT making decisions on what you're going to implement.
I'm just telling you, Jim, I've been on the BOT now for a long time, well, not a long time, but, and I've heard this so many times from other members, like, well, Tanya, it's not in the comp plan, so I don't think it's worth pursuing. And I also am thinking from a grant perspective, when people are applying for BOCO or this, that, the other, it's nice to say, and as referred to in the comp plan, blah, 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 blah. And I know the rink is going to be looking for grants. I hope so. And the tennis, there's a lot of ideas of what could happen in that space. And I just wanted to mention that. I'm just going to move quick because I took a lot of notes and I never want to hear it. A lot of things in this draft, and you may have changed it because I didn't read the final version, are super specific. A lot of things are already not even happening anymore. And I'm in order. I'm just going in order. It made me think car share program. Well, that we've already decided to axe that. So maybe it shouldn't be in the comp plan. Maybe it should be more general, like say the idea of it, but not refer to it in such detail about where it is in the draft, where there's a lot of stuff. I mean, the idea is still a good idea. I don't want to say that's not, but that idea, that actual plan is no longer, we never really took off. So it just to have a lot of specific stuff is, I think, kind of weird because it's like, oh, that's not even, it never happened. I'm a little concerned the farmers.
Yeah, we just made that decision 2 weeks ago, so you all did not.
Yeah, no, I know. There's a lot of specific stuff in here, like, well, I'll get to it when we get the farmers market. I feel like could have been mentioned in the community hub as a community hub, and not because we allow nonprofit booths for free at every farmers market, and that was an idea that said we need more of that hub stuff for the art nonprofits, and the farmers market actually does provide that 2 times a month from May to October. So it'd be nice to hear a mention of that. And then I'm curious, more out of curiosity, about the BVSD as a transportation option for people using the school buses to get people from here to there, not related to just going to school. I'm wondering if there's something that's something you guys have seen in other communities, or where that came from, because they've actually been cutting routes up here. Like they don't even go to Eldora anymore. The kids there have to get the ride. So I'm just curious if that's something that you guys actually spoke to BVSD about, or it's been something you've seen in other towns. I think it's a great idea. I mean, the buses are out driving around. So was the idea like they would just pick people up in town and drop them off at some of the, like they've, I mean, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, internal transportation. I would need to ask Fair and Peers around that, but I know that the mobility plan speaks to a lot of transit items, and they wrote the transportation chapter for this document. So I think, honestly, for all of these, Tanya, if you could just throw them together in an email, and then we can make sure we have responses and say, yep, we added this ice rink thing to the plan. We talked about the farmers market, because I want to make sure we're tracking all of this.
Well, who do I email that to? Just the planning commission?
Yeah, you can email it to Jim, you can email it to John, and then they'll forward that information to me.
Okay, I'm just going to go real quick because some of the other things that I thought could be mentioned in our energy section was the concept of a microgrid, a Nederland microgrid, not just working with Excel to improve them, or not just working with them, but somehow to become more independent of them. There was another objective that the NDDA had thrown around, was a sanitation district for the CBD businesses, so they could have a coordinated trash recycling compost for the restaurants in the CBD. And that would be something that would be really great to mention that. And it hasn't taken off though. That's the problem. And then a lot of and this is the draft, so maybe it's not there anymore. Almost every one of the existing events that you guys mentioned of possible events when you're in the arts and entertainment section is they're outdated. They don't even happen. So I think more the idea of keeping it like the concept of these sort of things, music, art, community, but maybe not getting so specific. Because I just, when I read that and I see like, oh, this doesn't even, like even the NetFest ones, like, well, they're not, that happened, but it's not really happening again. But the idea of it is still there and fantastic. It makes me sad. It isn't a way to see like, oh, these things don't happen anymore. They happened once, or anyway, that was it for my comments.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you for
a great document. And I like the long, I don't have it read. The draft version has a lot of great suggestions, and it's a great resource for future boards and current to take the ball and go running, because it's great.
But we want to make this as relevant and important as possible. So I really appreciate all that feedback. So we'll make sure to record it and show you how we've edited the final document.
And I'll send
to
it to you
incorporate
in
it.
an email. So
Yeah, thank you.
thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. I appreciate those questions. And yeah, also, in that the PC was mostly focused on zoning and housing. It's good to hear questions that cover other areas that they weren't focused on.
La 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 la. Can you guys hear us?
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's why. Okay, fabulous.
The first thing we heard was la la la.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. We were cut out there for just a second. So
Okay.
we're good now. We're flying with colors now.
Did you hear Tanya's comments and questions?
Yeah, no, we were doing the same thing. We were commending her for going through so detailed. And just to clarify, Tanya, the draft that you're seeing is like, there is no final copy yet. This is the draft.
Yeah.
And that's what we're debating.
Thanks for clarifying that. And I do appreciate the questions that, I don't know if you guys heard it, but that, that Tanya had that weren't about housing or zoning that the PC maybe didn't focus on. So I appreciate that. What other questions do other trustees have?
Any other clarifying questions?
I have a couple, but
Yeah, go for it.
Really quick, before you do that, can you sound check online? Can somebody give us just online say something?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
we're just having a few technical difficulties on this end.
Go for it, Luke.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, obviously you guys, this is a great document, so it's super helpful. Just a couple of things as I was going through this, in the land use section, I noticed that the area around the elementary school and the public land adjacent to that, which is part of the Mud Lake Open Space Conservation Easement, is designated just as public undeveloped. But all of that land is under conservation easement and is at least signposted. I don't know what the current actual zoning is, but it's signposted as parks and open space. And so I just wanted
Are you saying in the 3 mile plan page or which
No,
map?
I am looking at the map on page 56. So this is the existing land use map.
Is that figure 2.7?
2.4, I think.
Page 56 of the packet or of the document?
Sorry, I'm actually looking at the wrong. I'm talking about the wrong. You're correct. 2.7
Okay.
on page 70 is the one. I was confusing the existing one with the future one. Anyway, so that one designates the area that is BVSD owned public land for the elementary school is in the same zoning as all this other land to the north of it, which is under conservation easement, and seems like that is supposed to be parks and open space. There's also a piece of land on the far northwest corner of the town property out there that's I don't know what the exact status of that one, but it's also basically national forest over there. And it caught my attention because the piece of property along at the end of Lakeshore Drive, in the current map that's marked as undeveloped, but in the future map that's marked as parks and open space, which makes sense. It just doesn't make sense that the land that's under the Mud Lake Conservation Easement is not also designated as parks and open space.
Could you circle those spots?
I'll share my screen really quick and see if we
Yeah,
can
I know.
find
I'm
the-
like looking at the draft just to make sure trying to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so let's see.
This is 2.4 existing land use.
Yeah.
We're looking at go to 2.7, right?
2.7, but that one works as well. But
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's a little bit, it's maybe actually clearer to understand on the 2.41.
Aiden, this is what Roger was talking about at the PC meeting, and one of the things we were talking about changing. That's correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that one.
So these,
Hey, great. Thank you. Yeah, the big blue chunk in the top left there, that large blue parcel is.
It's almost like I'm at a meeting. Roger Cornell Planning Commission. Yeah, we have discussed this, and it's a fine line between what that is, and staff has been working for months. This brought to us about what are all these lands? Are they open space, town property? And I certainly brought up exactly the question you had about the Mud Lake annexation, that's open space, and it's very clear. And the attorney's looking at this. We've looked at all these properties, and every one is on a list to be looked at and understood what it is. And I'm with you. I would say that the absolutely Moose Meadows there, which is part of the annexation in Mud Lake, is certainly, they're going to find out that there's contingencies there. The other property you talked about was the annexation over in Caribou Ridge. So yes, but the point is that we understand and know, and the town and the attorney is looking to see what is the legal status and put this. But I think the Planning Commission agreed, or many, we all thought that I almost wanted a separate designation there as open space, and clearly are. We had the one right there at Chipeta Park, to the east of Chipeta Park, which was looked at as being developed. And we're pretty clear. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's under question, but the point is that the town is looking to investigate each and every property to designate them, whether they're open space and whether or not they should become parks, and just as you described. So it's not a miss, it's an investigation. Is that about right, Jennifer?
Yeah, and Roger, you had suggested some language that we add there, right? Like just to say, that's what we ended up talking about, right? That we're going to add language to say that this is not.
Yeah, that it's just not it's not public property. So yes, if we could do that, some way to put it in there to say that, this is, right now it's open space. Can open space be developed? That's the question. Or is these, just as you spoke, and which I agree, that no, certainly the Mud Lake one, I would find out that we'll do a lot of research when we find out that there's agreements there. And right. Yeah, that it's going to be what it's going to be.
And so
plus the fact of the feedback of the town in general,
right,
will have to be considered also.
Right. Can we count on that being sort of finalized before the comp plan is finalized? So at least whatever is marked on the maps in the comp plan is.
That would kind of be up to how they can word that out and do it. I would argue that it's just like all the comp plans. I guess I'm going to comment on just what Tanya was talking about. Because I've worked on many comp plans since 1986. I think this is my fifth one. And I don't know if it's a good comp plan or a bad comp plan where you would have an issue. Chris could certainly comment on this, that you would have an issue 2 years from now, and people would be able to bring a comp plan and say, well, the comp plan speaks to this, and argue for a development project or for a transportation project. And other people, opponents of that project, could come and say, well, the comp plan speaks to this. And that's actually, so the idea to try to nitpick, or not, that's not the correct word, to pick and choose the paragraphs is actually very hard in a comp plan. A good comprehensive plan should speak to all the pros and cons of a project. And so therefore, people can come and say, here's pros, here's a con, and this is all spoken of 10 years ago. So I would argue that whether we would say it's open space or town property at this point is not necessarily important. What's important that we research it and find out exactly what the legal terms are. And actually the town can then go forward and agree that, okay, these properties are definitely open space. But the comp plan and this whole project that we just did brought up the idea that, look at all this, 30% of the town is undeveloped. Is it open space? Is it what? But that's what we need to do going forward. So the point of the comp plan is to point this out, is the important part of the project of the comp plan, to make us investigate and to determine, truthfully and correctly, what does the town want in the future for these individual parcels. I hope that helps. I mean, that's the way I feel about it. And I totally agree. This is open space. Certainly, some of them are clearly open space, but we'll continue to work. If I could mention, see, I'm here now, and I would take 30 more seconds. What Tanya spoke of in the pros and cons, there are many things in that document that I could argue about. She brought up the parking. There was a sentence there that said we should use the abundant parking on our town streets. And I agree. If someone just read that sentence, that would be a tough one to swallow. But you have to take the whole document as a whole. And every one of these projects or these statements that'll come out of the comp plan, the different groups, whether it's planning, whether it's, Parks and Rec, they need to take the comp plan, and we will develop an agenda in the future, the next 2 years, which we did the last time, and come up with projects. Chris, you certainly should speak to this. And we will determine, what does that say and what does the town need, just like the zoning and that zoning map that was put forward there, the flume. But it is an idea, it is a roadmap, and it does not go forward until the town takes that whole process of going through planning, going through ordinance, and using this as a basis to make an ordinance, and then decide with hearings, what does the town want, what does the town need, and how we come out and draft an ordinance. And then that's the next step, is when the road, where the tire really hits the asphalt. This is just a roadmap, but the next step is the important step. So thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
So I guess my question to the
Can I ask a question real quick of Roger? Because
he's got to come back up.
What's that?
You got to get him to come back up then.
Oh, you can sit up there, Roger, if you want. Sorry, I told Jim that we could have a seat or two for folks from the PC up at the DS. So my question is, and it's for everyone really, like what I've heard people say, is that part of the issue with the comp plan is it has no teeth. It's not code. It's referred to, but it has no teeth. Some degree, I thought that was part of what we were going to do, was give it more teeth. And, just help me understand if I'm wrong on that, or, talked about we could bring things back as an ordinance, but like, I mean, historical comp plans are great, but to some degree, we'd like a comp plan that's, better this time around. So, I'm just wondering, I mean, not to take anything away from comp plans of the past, but like, are we after something that has more teeth in it than the past?
Yeah, and I'd like to comment on that, because this has been one of the things that last year and a half, 2 years ago, we as a BOT said that was something that we wanted to see, something more actionable, actually. And I would like it to actually hold us accountable, because over and over again, the complaints with that previous comp plan is that you could argue both sides, right? It says their preference for infill, but it doesn't actually not say no annexation. And so it wasn't very clear for future boards of like, where do we land? Where do we actually draw the line? And so that's part of my feedback, is that I would love for it to see and to show that exactly what that roadmap can be for the future boards.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that from, for the two plus years I've been mayor, I've heard that from majority of trustees, from time to time, if not regularly.
And if I could just jump into, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Sterling. I think there's kind of two issues here. When we say we want it to have more teeth, what does that mean, right? Is it enforceable? That's what I hear when I hear that. But I also think the separate question is, do we want to have more concrete, actionable ideas? And that second part is what I think I'm looking for in a comp plan, is concrete steps that we can take that are defined for us based on research and based on community engagement. And so I like that. I'm cool with having the compromise of having it be strategies. It still feels pretty concrete to me, and I like that for future, as a future guide for future boards.
One thing I might just kind of bring back to this conversation is that the board doesn't have the authority to make a comp plan. The planning commission does. And the planning commission could adopt this without any action from the board. And they're your appointed body. And so I think that's the really important relationship here. And I will tell you that in comprehensive planning, the best practice is not to say, to leave yourself some ambiguity, because you're talking about things that are going to happen maybe over the next 10 years. And so there should be concrete steps, but also I'll give you an example from Idaho Springs. They said that a particular parcel of land was appropriate for density development. And it turned out that to get the development there was going to cost $47 million to get all the utilities there, and it was just never going to work. And so that kind of thing is going to happen just when we do actual research into the engineering of certain projects and things like that. And so I guess what I would tell you is I think that it's really important for you to maybe think about, not that you should think about worst case scenarios, but you should think about this as like our planning effort. Like is this going to guide the actual strategic plan, which is those concrete goals that we need to accomplish over the next 2 years, and then the 2 years after that, and the 2 years after that. And how can we be accountable to those goals using this as our guideline? And then maybe at the end of this process, when we're looking back and saying, well, how did we do, be able to measure like by KPI or whatever. Jim, I don't know if you want to talk.
Well, and real quick before Jim, I mean, the example that you gave was perfect. I mean, it was this land could be appropriate for, you investigated, just kidding, right? Didn't end up being that way. I think when it comes to some of the actual items and things that we're talking about, I'm going to go back to Trustee Corvalon's comment, because it was also in my mind as well regarding the ice rink. That is a key public asset within our community, and I don't want it to get missed as a part of a strategic plan, right? And so some of those other pieces, those would be worthy of putting very concretely into the plan. Go for it, Jim.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you that the main thing, it's interesting because we've actually went the other way from what you're saying, specifically to give the BOT and the town and the future BOTs flexibility. Okay, so when we put stuff down here in writing like that, the priorities for the ice rink right now, that's only happened in the last couple of years that we've decided we really want to make this a focus. I mean, it wasn't even under the town until, the last couple of years. And so what happens if the funding environment or priorities for the town change in 3 years, in 5 years? So really our idea is, what Roger said before is exactly what we will be developing with, and bringing to you is, okay, now we've got the 10-year plan of overarching goals and things that we're doing. And I don't think we can, make, good perfect the enemy of the good. We're trying to get to a 85, 90% solution for what we could do for our community, and then allow flexibility for us to be able to come in and drill down off of that. When we start talking about, again, when Tanya was talking about, okay, off-street parking, okay, that's clearly not going to be appropriate in Old Town to reduce off-street parking to help us enhance our housing goals. But if we then don't allow that in there as an option for us to look at in different things, I think it takes it away. You know, from our perspective, and Roger, you know, and we've had robust discussions within the Planning Commission, you know, felt somewhat differently in some of these things, but overall as a Planning Commission, we were looking to try and have a goal that's a document that's going to hit the majority of what we want to do as a town right now, you know, as we think it's going to be in 10 years. But if we start putting a lot of specifics in there, we looked at it as, okay, now in 5 years, you're going to have somebody from the public who's standing up holding this document who's saying, how come this isn't done? You said you were going to make a priority out of the recreational thing and do all these things for the ice rink. Where's the action on that? Well, I think we all know that it's a very uncertain environment going forward for funding, for grants. All those things are kind of up in the air on what we're going to look like in the next few years. So I would push back and say, I think that when we then sit down with the town staff and with John as a planning commission and start saying, okay, now we want to develop this and drill down with guidance from the planning commission for what our specific actions we want to try and accomplish over the next 2 years, and go like at a 2-year type of intervals, you know, that would be where we would start looking at the specifics of it. You know, the other thing is, you know, we could work on this all the way till this time next year. We could continue trying to refine and put this in, but we're never going to get 100% of what everybody's looking for. And also recognizing that the environment could change. I mean, we could suddenly have in 18 months, oh man, we're in a crisis because all funding is completely different from what we thought it was going to be. And now we have to relook at all of our priorities. You know, at that case, and that'll be the pushback, I guess, when people say, hey, you had this in your comp plan, you said you were going to do this and this and this and this. You know, well, it's a plan, it's a roadmap. It doesn't say, you know, it's not an ordinance. It's not a resolution that says we're going to actually specifically go in and do these things. So that would be what I would say as we're start trying to, I've taken notes on everything you've said, and, you know, depending on what John thinks, you know, if we want to go in and start going specifically and adding items, you know, I think we're looking at more like April before we get this out. And there seemed like there was some timeline issues on us trying to get this implemented.
We want it done right. We don't want it done fast.
On the ice rink, it actually does talk about the ice rink. So if you look at page 53, it mentions that as part of our recreation landscape. It's listed under sports fields, playgrounds, recreational amenities, and then it shows it on the Nederland recreational amenities map, figure 4.1. And then if you look at the key issues identified, you can see like they're broadly responsive to all the recreational facilities we have: maintenance, funding, and capacity.
Right.
Tourism impacts opportunities, indoor recreation facility needs and upgrades, and then the outdoor recreation needs and upgrades. So we also don't talk about the community center the same way. Like none of our, what we might need to do is update our capital plan as well. That could be part of this too, as a recommendation to look at all of our facilities for recreation or something like that.
In terms of the capital improvement plan and what's listed?
This is also in the PROST. So the Park for PROST app is working on it, and and maybe Luke, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it's definitely an aspect of, or I guess one of your key strategies that you guys have been talking about.
Yeah, and somewhat paradoxically, we've sort of been stalling on the PROST until the comp plan was out.
Until the comp plan.
Review.
Because they want this in order to set their strategy.
Yeah, and I think that you know, it's definitely a balance of, you know, enough detail to give direction and not too much to bind you. But certainly for you know, the comp plan should guide a lot of the other documents, and so it does need enough, you know, grit to it to be able to help the Parks Department put together the PROS plan, and I think that is it's tricky, but it would really help to be clear about some of the things I am going to take that opportunity to circle this back to the open space designation, since it sort of dovetails into the PROST and parks and open space. So some of between the 2.4 map and the 2.7 map, some land was redesignated from just general public, undeveloped public use to open space, like the lakeshore parcel, and stuff around, I guess actually just the lakeshore parcel is the one that jumps out at me, but like what's the logic between changing the zoning designation of those parcels and not changing the zoning designation of the Mud Lake open space? That seems like, is that a SE group question, or is that a planning commission question?
I will tell you that when we were looking at this, there was feedback where we wanted to identify, again, focusing on the biggest priority, which is housing. We were looking at trying to be able to identify any possible, without, we couldn't say specifically that there was absolutely no way that Lakeview Drive property over there couldn't be investigated and gone back to look at, because there's very few available parcels in town that we could develop for affordable housing.
But the Mud Lake open space, it's got conservation easement on it per Boulder County.
And I think what they did when they went in and they did that, they just put everything that was public on there, that we didn't have a specific, again, as you heard Roger say, that this was something that was brought up. We just met and we're talking about this 2 weeks ago. So there has not been a updated map put in there since a lot of these things were brought up. But if it's something that, and I'll ask John left. I guess I'll ask the SE group, how hard it would be to actually go in there and have a special designation that shows, that these public lands, but they're already designated as under a conservation easement or under some kind of a designation like that.
I don't think it would be too hard to either like have an asterisk or have some kind of note somewhere that says like, consider the conservation easement, or, some kind of note that it's not, totally open. But so we'll note that, and we'll, work with Jonathan and his team and just make sure we understand like which exact parcels we're talking about and how exactly to treat those, whether it's like a new category or maybe some kind of footnote or something to just make sure that that's included in the document.
I wonder if it could be something like some kind of a, gray barred across, without changing the public land designation, but gray bar, those kind of things.
I still don't see the reason why it's not just open space. It's currently open space. It's got a conservation easement. Nothing can be built on it ever. I don't quite understand why we would change other parcels and designate them as open space in the new map and not call this one open space when I don't think it could be anything but.
I'm not arguing with you. No one's arguing with you. That's fine. We're talking about
right. I think so. We had direction from Nikki about that, not necessarily that basically not every single parks and open space parcel necessarily needed to stay parks and open space. So I think maybe we just need to revisit that of understanding which ones are under, more protective covenants and which ones are more open to reinterpretation. So we'll note that and circle back with the staff and figure out the best way to treat those in the future land use map.
Cool. All right, I'm going to jump to a second question, which is not a question, but comment is, can we add a brief mention of a recreation district as something we'd like to consider in our future planning for the recreation section of the comp plan? I don't want to lock us into it, but I think that's something we should.
Sure.
It's a strategic.
It's funny. I've been joking with everybody the last couple of weeks. So like, I didn't get into planning, you talk about grocery stores and swimming pools, but it turns out all I talk about are grocery stores and swimming pools. So we're happy to figure out the right way to mention a recreation district, because I know a potential swimming pool, which often is facilitated by recreation district, has come up. I remember that very clearly from the engagement.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That would be excellent. And then last comment is, I think that this flex zoning is excellent. Are there any other areas that we could consider for flex zoning? Does it, besides the what's currently industrial, does it make sense to expand that anywhere else in the kind of downtown area?
Well, no, I would kind of put that up to planning commission. I don't know, Roger, if there's any other planning commission members there tonight, if you think there's any other areas that might be appropriate for that.
We basically, that was the main area that we looked at for mixed use, that, you know, at some point, there's been actually some contact by the family that owns the majority of that in the industrial zone. And they're kind of looking at that, and they said that they're motivated, them and their siblings motivated to possibly sell that. And that's something that we'd looked at as probably our main opportunity to, you know, have mixed use, you know, to have some kind of, you know, different industry with, you know, something like what they have with Kathmandu, where you have housing above that. I will say that there's also the area over that between the Catholic Church and the post office. That would be another one, but I just looked that up on Property Viewer today. That was just sold in 2023 to a new person for $2 million. So, you know, everything is about resources, you know, and what we'd have available. But those are the two largest areas currently in town that we would be able to look at as for developing for mixed use and housing. But I'll tell you the other thing, when we talk about that area along past Rodeo Court going down Lakeview Drive, the reason that we asked for flexibility to look at that was no one could give us a for sure 100%. We said, yeah, this, when it was put in, this was designated for a park. Okay, can we investigate and find out, because there's a lot of land, if you go look at that we could, that's wouldn't take a lot to develop that in, you know, just on the other side of Rodeo Court there for affordable housing or some kind of you know, development like that, if in fact we could go back and investigate and find out exactly, you know, where is the information that says that, and, you know, is it going to be something like we go back to the person or the entity that gifted that to the town and say, hey, you know, this, you know, I know this was what your original designation and was for it and what we determined to use it for, but some of our priorities in towns have changed and we desperately need housing. Is this something you would agree on that we could possibly change the designation and look at that? So some of the issues were we didn't want to cut off any possible properties for housing.
That's confusing, because that's the parcel that is switched and is marked as parks and open space in the new map.
Okay, so it's something to investigate.
Yeah, something to investigate.
Gotcha. Anything else, Luke?
That is, I mean, yeah, I think that the one place that jumped to me as flex is the place along Stinky Gulch where the auto shops are, as being mixed industrial flex.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know, something that's a little bit heavier than commercial.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I
Awesome.
think I like that. I like that zoning designation, though. I think that's a good idea.
Ty, did you have anything? Anything over in this side? Okay. And my real quick comment on just what you had said earlier, Jim, in terms of, you know, you didn't want to lock us into like a, you know, something actionable or something to do within the comprehensive plan. And that you want flexibility for things that might change. I think we've got that covered in like part of the introductions and everything, and, you know, the use of strategies is that things can change and they potentially will change. My fear is that citizens hearing you say, you know, we didn't want to put something in there, and then they come back and say, where is it? It makes it sound like we want to be less accountable. And I actually want us to be more accountable. And that's my personal thing. This was the feedback that I gave to the Planning Commission, is like, give it teeth, make it actionable, right? And so I think that we've got enough guardrails built into it in terms of we can flex with the documents. Things are going to change. But I also do like citizens coming back to us and saying, hey, where is the thing or whatever? I'm okay with that. I want them to come back to us and ask those questions. So that's just my last parting thoughts.
I agree with you, Nicole. I want, now that we're pouring over that map, I didn't notice it before, but AmeriGas, why is that a blue?
On 2.4, 2.7, Tanya.
What is it? Let me just make it small.
2.7.
2.7. I was looking at it. Could be the same on 2.4. Let me go look.
Well, no, it's switched from
Central
in
business
2.4 it's commercial.
Oh, so that's like the hope, I guess. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we'll make sure on our meeting, I believe we have one on next Monday with John and Britt to go through both of those maps, see if we either need to create a separate designation or if we can handle it through just a little note. And then Luke, I'll ask you to just make sure that John has a map with like the circled parcels, because I don't know all the parcel names as well as you do. So just so that we can kind of zoom in and make sure. But as was mentioned, as Roger and Jim mentioned, there is still some ongoing research to understand the history of the conservation easements. That's unfortunately not, right at hand. And we can, as part of our package of materials that we'll give to the town, we will be providing all of the GIS data. So if there is future needs, there either is possibility that we can update it or that town staff can update it to make sure it's accurate. And I think I would also just add on the question about the ice rink, definitely send us some language. May I just add a sentence that says like, consider future enhancements and programming at the ice rink.
The microgrid.
And the microgrid. And that is something that John mentioned maybe back in October that kind of slipped through the cracks. So I apologize on that one. And we'll make sure, that does certainly fit our resiliency themes in a lot of ways. So we'll make sure there's reference to that. The
Awesome.
recreation section does have quite a few references to the community center, Chupeta Park, Central Boulder Creek. So we can absolutely add space for other specific recommended.
Yeah, in the district. Although I do, yeah, I do want to address. So, Mayor Billy, the point of we're bumping up against the timeline and everything.
Yeah,
Mayor Billy, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, because I mean, my position is let's do it right. We don't need to do it fast. Yes, we had to try to get a goal in place, but this is a 10-year document. This is super important, and maybe, and I'd love to get a feel from the rest of the BOT members if they'd like another meeting to sit with it or whatnot, come back and look at it again. I see head shaking, but I'd like to get your thoughts, Mayor Billy and Tanya.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be value in it for a couple things. I mean, and I guess John and Jennifer need to let us know if that's a doable thing, bring it back as a discussion item. I mean, some of the, and I'd like to get a sense of where the other trustees are at, but to me, it seems like, Tanya brought up a lot of good questions, and I think there are just, it warrants better review. So we feel like we're really clear on it. This is not the version we saw, when it was presented to us a while ago before it went to the PC. So, I guess we haven't seen this full of a draft, but, I see value in it on that. And because I have some specific kind of things I'm looking at, chapter 16, chapter 15 in the code, and like of some of my issues with that I talked about before, like the teeth and Well, I'll get in, I'll just mention these specifically now, and then maybe this will help folks decide what they think about another meeting. But so I look at the criteria for a special review use in chapter 16, the criteria for plan unit development in chapter 16, and criteria, part of the annexation ordinance processes too. And they all mention comp plan to a different, generally to a similar theme. I can read it like from the words are specifically in special review uses as one of the approval criteria. The only things that you look at when you're doing a quasi judicial SRU is number 4 is consistent with the comp plan. PUD, again, the only things you look at when you're approving PUDs are these criteria. Number 2 is the application is consistent with the comp plan. And then it's in a couple of places in the annexation process, talking about description of consistency with the comp plan and generally conform to the goals and policies of comp plan and consistent with. So I mean, these are just kind of, it's all kind of the same theme, but like I've been in the PC and in the BOT and frankly argued one way on a PUD with the, the little bear thing. And while other folks were arguing another way, and we were both using the comp plan as part of our like logic, because, we went and found things in the comp plan we liked that to us made, not we liked, but to us made sense and were logical as to why it did or didn't meet it. Okay. And so, and that, in the special review use, I've seen that done too. And so, I mean, to me, this is where, I mean, maybe this is more about a chapter 16 rewrite and, is the comp plan even make sense to have in the code if it doesn't have teeth, or if it can be kind of manipulated, kind of interpreted, 7 different ways by 7 different trustees, or, 8, 9 ways by different commissioners. So that to me is part of my challenge, or, just my like renewed kind of pointing out that, part of what we wanted was more teeth for this thing. And I don't know, John, you can give us your logic from your perspective, in your role as town administrator and deputy with Idaho Springs and, planning commission. You can tell me what you think and commit, but, trustees, I'm curious what you think about that kind of thing.
I would just say 2 things, well, maybe 3 things. 1, this is not a regulatory document. There's no way to turn it into a regulatory document. It's not going to have teeth like that. What it can be is maybe like, maybe that's a conversation to have with the planning commission. I want to remind you that this is their document. And so I think that that's a really important thing. I will say that best practice in these situations should be to very seriously consider the recommendations you have from your advisory bodies. And I think that they've had this feedback too. They are going to have their hearing. And so I would recommend that you guys maybe have a conversation with your planning commission a little bit about this and how this might look and work. And then the final thing I would say is we funded this through a grant, and I agree we should get it right, but we should be aware of the fact that our consultants had a timeline with us, and also there may be escalated costs, and we need to make sure that they're available to continue to make the changes. And so I think those are things you might want to investigate.
For sure.
So to investigate them, we need more time.
And I'm going to tell you again, this is Jim Reese with the Planning Commission, that we, as much as we keep hearing you push and push and push about we want specifics in here, I'm going to push back and say we intentionally do not want to put specifics in here because you guys may not be the board that is around in 5 years.
That's exactly why.
Yeah,
is
but,
that
but we don't want to
right, exactly why.
tie anybody's hands and put and then say, okay, this specifically says we're going to have a pool in a rec district, and so how come we're not putting all this priority and effort towards that? And so what we're having, everything you guys are going to sign off on every single action that happens. This comp plan is just an overarching roadmap of what we want to do for the community. It is not saying we're going to specifically put in the pool. Just because something is not mentioned in there doesn't mean that it can't be done. I hear what you're saying about this, but I'm going to tell you that we could work on this for the next year and continue to do this. And we feel like we're at a 95% solution. I'm happy to take this information back, but I'm not looking at spending 3 more months on rewriting this. What's going to happen is that you're going to get it, and then you're going to take this document and you're going to then take specifics from it, and we're going to help work with the town, and we're going to do a year by year, every 2 years kind of thing to drill down from the goals of the comp plan. So we'll go back and try and rework this with the SC group, to meet your satisfaction. But again, and Nicole Sterling may not be on the BOT in 4 years.
That's exactly why, because you put it so perfectly. It's a roadmap, and there's so much rework that happens with a BOT when the comp plan isn't more structured and deep, as a roadmap. And that's what we want. We just want that roadmap to continue beyond us. You said it exactly. That's exactly what we want. And so things like a microgrid and things like that, and it's worth putting in there. Tierney, what were you going to say?
Can I just ask you a question, Nicole? So
Yeah.
to you, so putting in microgrid, putting in rink, to me, these are concrete things that we can add in. And I think we've heard that these are things that we might be able to add in just in terms of ideas. But the rest, like the structure, how is everybody feeling about the structure? Because
Structure's
to me,
fine.
this is specific. To me, this is the specific that I'm looking for, the strategies with the goals that we can then use and investigate and do our implementation later. To me, this is what we're looking for. So I'm just confused. I think what I'm hearing is that we're kind of all on the same page.
Yes,
But I'm confused.
and we just need a
about
couple
what-
more, and you're absolutely right. You guys could go through and adopt this and be fine and dandy. And we know the pain of rolling over from board member to board and to board. And to have that concrete roadmap, gosh, that would be beautiful. So that nobody's having to interpret.
Yeah, I agree. And part of it too is trying to tighten up, because I think when the examples I used with PUD and SRUs, in the PC or in the BOT, everyone was legitimately pulling their own interpretations of stuff that was written in the comprehensive plan. And I guess, like it was said earlier, if there's 2 sides written to everything, it is, to me, what kind of a roadmap says go right here, well, I actually go left. I'm not trying to rip this thing apart. I think the structure is good, but that just kind of comes back to me to the philosophy of it. I want to better believe that this makes it harder for people to completely diverge, trying to use it as their same, folks
And we're not going to completely eradicate that. There's
Yeah,
still
you're
going to
probably
be
right.
able to use that, and it'll never be 100% foolproof. But just where we can just outline that plan a little bit more concretely, I think it's a win for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
all.
agree.
But keeping into consideration, I think, John, you bring up a great point in that, this contractor, we've got a grant. We want to keep it within scope, and, not delay that too much.
Can I offer a potential starting point for a midpoint here? So one of the things we could do, Britt and I are meeting with SC Group on Monday. I think they've been taking notes on what was said here. And I think we've also created a feedback loop for other comments that maybe we have. What we could do is further incorporate these into the draft. We've already, the hearing is supposed to happen in February. So that's kind of, it's been noticed because there's a notice period for that. But would the board feel comfortable with the planning commission deliberating those changes that they're hearing and trying to make this happen? Or do you want it to come back to you first? I guess that would be really the big process.
Well, we do have another meeting that happens on the 18th before their meeting. So I think that would still give us, I'm just putting that out to folks. If we want another one, it's on the 18th. Their meeting doesn't happen until the week or so after. What's the notice? How much noticing needs to happen, Jonathan, for their hearing? What's the time frame for the notice for my?
Mayor Bill, it's not spelled out in state statute,
Right.
but it's already been noticed. If
Yeah, it's fine.
if the hearing.
I don't think, I have no, yeah, I'm just Jim, I know you're already getting more gray hair, but like, I have no offense. Me too. I have I'm not saying go back and rewrite this or that's not my goal. I think the structure of it's good, like Trustee Maris said, and I think in general, it's a great document. We've come a long way, and you guys made some good tweaks to it when you revisited it and tweaked it last. Really good ones. Improvements, not tweaks, improvements. I'm just what Nicole or Mayor Pro Tem Sterling just said, like just tightening it up in a few places where it might make sense, or at least looking at to do that. To me, that just seems worth a little time and still coming in before your next meeting.
We'll
Thoughts
certainly,
from other trustees?
well, I'll tell you that we're willing to work on that and try and meet it. But I'm going to tell you that getting everything, between now and then, somebody's going to read this document and they're going to come up with 6 more ideas. So at some point you have to say, okay, we've got, a document that's going to allow us to drill down on our specific goals. But we'll do our best. We want to support what the BOT wants. And what the citizens want, and I'll work with town. And I have not heard from the SE group if, which is, I'm not writing this. I'm not personally writing this document. To the SE group and town staff that are working on this. So I'd head it back to the SE group and say, from what you're hearing there, is this possible, to get this done? Or does it look like we're going to have to push this out a little farther?
And I'll just lay out some time for, like 2 weeks from now and the 18th is our next meeting. And then it's 8 days from then till the PC meeting. So just with that time frame in your head, that's Aiden and Gabby, what are you thinking?
The only thing before that is that the PC needs a chance to look and deliberate over the changes. Like, it's not fair to them to have those changes come and then they have to adopt it in a hearing, but having that process. So I think we would want to make sure that we build that in for them so that they could, because ultimately this is their document. And I just want to say that very clearly, that needs to be respected here. So I think we need to figure out how that could work process-wise.
100%.
I think that's the key thing is this is the Planning Commission document. It is not a regulatory document. It is a roadmap. We can have a few hooks in there, but there is no way to give it teeth. So having a SE group and John and Cassidy, Britt, sorry, I'm zoned out here for a bit. Britt and John meet with SE group on Monday, go through a lot of these changes, fix up the maps, things like that, and then get it to the Planning Commission for their meeting at the end of the month. That keeps us on target, incorporates all our comments, and has a document that is clearly far superior than to our previous comp plan, and
provides that roadmap for future boards.
So I think we have a plan to move forward with. You guys working on it, getting a draft to the next draft to the Planning Commission, and then they can adopt at the end of the month, and we can.
Yeah. I don't. The changes. Honestly, I think the changes are doable. I think we can make these happen. And just to give context for where this whole teeth thing came up was when, I'm forgetting his name, Bob. Do you want us to that just a little bit? Because I think people have lost context of what exactly that meant.
Bob, you mean Jennifer's boss, that Bob?
Yeah, Jennifer's,
Yeah, my partner.
Yeah.
Partner.
That's all right. No worries. So I think it's really related to your future planning, and what you have right now as a draft definitely provides you guidance for future planning for changes to your land use code. This draft right here is going to be very useful for making all of those changes.
Yeah.
On the application of criteria for special review use, is a special review use application consistent with the comprehensive plan? For those applications that are doable and workable on the particular lot, likely it's just going to be, as you all said, there's going to be pieces of the comp plan that you can pick out that support the project and pieces of the comp plan that you can pick out that don't support the project. But you can't do away with that.
Right.
Where you will have an area that the comp plan would be supportive is if the project is completely inconsistent with what this town wants to do. And then you can say, no, the comp plan does not support it.
But that's the value of keeping that in there, in the criteria, is that it just keeps something
Really flagrant.
totally rogue from happening.
So really quick, just to be clear on the direction. So what we'll do, Britt and I will work with SE Group, and I guess Gabby and Aiden, if you have any concerns about this, like we're going to meet on Monday, we can incorporate most of these changes, and anything else that were emailed, we can kind of build that in, and then we could get that draft into your hands ASAP. And I think we could likely, I guess we could send that to Jennifer, we could send that to both boards as long as we don't have, and Britt and I can have the conversations with people and make sure that we've got kind of on the line there. And then I think that we'd be ready for the process we engage in. And would we still want to have another information item at the next meeting, or do we want to? Yeah,
I would like to personally. I mean, I don't necessarily want to push the BOT back or the PC back a month, but like, yes, I mean, personally, I would, another information item would be helpful for me. Maybe every trustee should say what they're thinking.
Let's go around the horn, Chris.
I think we've addressed a lot of things, and if these changes are made, then I don't think we need to have another look at the draft.
And we could always go to the PC hearing.
Yeah, the PC hearings.
Okay. Meredith or Tierney?
I agree.
Okay. Ty?
I also agree.
With Chris? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm going to just shoot you an email with a few, more detailed comments and feedbacks. But yeah, I think this is the thing I wanted to just kind of touch on is I think one of the key things that makes, and it's not necessarily the teeth, but it's the stuff is all those tables at the end, and it really breaks down like, here's what we want to do. And I think that is, when meeting guiding directives for future boards, that's going to be the part that's super helpful.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I would be okay with, going to, obviously going to the public hearing for the Planning Commission. That would probably meet most of my needs now after this meeting, Mayor Billy. Tanya, your thoughts?
Oh, I could go either way. I suppose if we were sent the draft or draft was available after the next round, either way. What's the idea? Some revisions might be done in the next week, and then that will go to the Planning Commission for their meeting that's coming up, or is it going to get pushed back a month? When is their hearing?
February 26th.
Yeah, February 26th.
Well, it sounds like it could be done in time, right?
It's just a matter of whether or not you want the Planning Commission to deliberate over the changes we're requesting.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would like that. Yeah, I'd like to at least have that in their notes for them to think about.
I mean, can they not deliberate in the public hearing, or they basically need to bring their final draft to the public hearing? Is that?
I'm getting the head nod that they can deliberate in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they can definitely talk about the document in the
Great.
public hearing. They can suggest changes, just if that's the desire.
Okay.
And the public hearing, if they don't finish at that meeting, the public hearing could be continued to a March meeting.
Okay. Does that work, Jim?
Yes, and I will just reiterate again, this is a overarching document. I understand the desire to try and get specifics in there, but I'm going to promise you, as you read through this again, you're going to find other things and ideas. I call them GFIs, great effing ideas that we want to get in there. Because let's do this. This is going to be good for the town. We've tried to come up with an 85% solution that's going to work for our community, and future Planning Commission and BOTs will then come from there and do the specifics. There's nothing that's going to get implemented that the BOT isn't going to vote on and say and move forward. I understand that we're trying to get as much stuff in there so that I hear what you're saying. So if there's a board in 6 years, we want to be sure that we had our stamp on it and we say, this is what's what we want to do. This is what we're looking to accomplish. the current environment at that time might be that they're like, you know what, that's not feasible anymore for us to do that. And so, as John said, we can put it in there, but that doesn't mean future BOTs are actually going to implement that. There's stuff from the last comp plan that never got there, and we're still trying to stuff that we're carrying over. But I will tell you that the main focus that we were looking at, and I've gotten guidance from John and from Mayor Billy that we really want to go in and look at Chapter 16, and I've heard from Tanya that we want to look at design standards for the central business district, and basically that's where we put specifics in there that are going to tie the hands for what we want going forward. This document isn't going to be something that a developer is going to come back and say, okay, it says it in the in the comp plan, so you have to do this. You have to allow me to do this because it has priorities change. Again, it's a 10-year document. We'll do our best, but I'm going to tell you right now, our plan was to look at final adoption on the 26th. I would appreciate, I'm going to ask that everything that you guys have talked about, we've sent over the last 6 months, we've been sending information back and forth to the SE group and to Britt and the town staff. Please put in an email to John and CC me as well, and we'll do our best to meet what you need. But I caution you that this can't be all things for all people. It just isn't that type of document. It's 130 pages.
We hear you, John. Jim,
Jim, I have a question related to Chapter 16 or whatever it's called. In this comp plan, it's something I didn't mention, but I wanted to. It was about the rezoning and of the density in every zoning group. So that's something that we had already passed in adjacent to affordable housing only. In this comp plan, it makes it sound like it's something to do across the board, regardless if the developer is going to provide affordable housing or just housing. What was your interpretation of that line? It's at the very beginning where it talks about changing the yard in bulk and say in Big Springs it's an acre, but make it half an acre. But that's something we did only in conjunction. That's already been passed and changed, but only if they're doing affordable housing. Is this intended to be in just for any developer, or is this still intended to be the way it's done already? Do you understand my question?
I think I do. And what we're looking at is these are possible things that we would look at for, it could be that, an opportunity comes up with the developer for affordable housing that we didn't, that we'll be able to go in and look at. But these are all, recommendations, strategies, they're not something that is put down, when we go through and we relook at doing the code or we put something out in an ordinance, that'll be what has the teeth to it. So these are things that we're looking at to try and give flexibility and to look at opportunities for additional housing. Basically we looked at this as that was our driving priority for the town was the need for these 120 housing units that we are short currently in our town. And so I see Roger has something that he'd like to throw in there too. Please.
Hold on, just, yeah.
Well, Tanya, you're exactly, the land use is what I focused on. If anybody knows, may know that I'm Mr. Land Use. So I agree 100% with you. And that's why the flume, and that actually we had a big discussion before. And looking at the flume and the general idea is one thing, but you need to understand that the next step that we've had designated out, that Steve had, and now Jim, is our next step of the Planning Commission after we're done this, is to look at Chapter 16 and try to redo 16. And what's going to be a big project for the town and for the board will be to look at Chapter 16. How do we do those things that you just brought up, that example? So how do we make housing? And we'll certainly have many opinions, but how would we change zoning right now? The land, the bulk.
Yeah, but that's already been done. Like we did that.
And that hasn't changed. This is just saying so the comprehensive saying that to change to get higher density development, you're going to have to change chapter 16. So actually, that's what I was speaking to. The next step is actually the bigger project. So this is just giving us an idea that that's the way we have to go for higher density housing. The next step is, well, where is that appropriate? How is that appropriate? So we will have to go through many, many meetings and hearings to try to decide what's best for the town. And in the past, we have done this before, and we have tried to do this before, but every time you try to change the density in neighborhoods, it becomes a very big discussion. And
Yeah.
so we will have to go forward with that and find appropriate places. That's why the flex designation is a good idea in those different areas. So we'll have to find appropriate places where there would be higher density. It does not mean that we're taking Big Springs or right across the board just because it'll say this zone, that zone. You know, we need to look at doing triplexes in an area. The next step is to work very hardly to find, well, where is that one little spot appropriate for that higher density? So again, it's a roadmap saying there's a need, but where we find that spot to do it, that's going to be actually the hard, the hard hearing and the hard thing to do. And so, yeah, that's all I can leave it at. It's really.
Okay, so your
next
intention is
step
not
chapter
across the
16.
board.
It is not across the board, and I agree with you. You would have to find a specific spot in a specific area to say these are appropriate. And of course, it'll be many, many hearings to find out where. An example would be what we just did down there across the street from RTD, how we put in, was it 26 units and all those things. So that's what it would be, something like that. And yes, we will not change zoning and density without many, many discussions with the neighborhoods and all that. And might even find out that the neighborhood might not even want it. So we'll have to, that'll be for the town to work on.
I'm sure they won't want it, but, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Jim. Not Jim. Thank you, Roger.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that clarification,
It's both of
Roger,
you.
because
Yeah.
that was a good specific question. Tanya, thanks for asking that. And thanks, Jim, for your perspective. I do appreciate it, even though I kind of cut you off. And appreciate SE Group, Gabby and Aiden, for your presentation, being here and answer questions, and everyone's work on this. Any more questions for these guys before we move on?
Are you clear,
And
John?
the plan
Yeah,
is y'all will meet with John and Britt on Monday and talk about these. And if there's some other ideas, you can email them to SE Group and copy Jim and of course email John.
yeah, please do. And
Thank-
if you have questions that, if we can include it, just let me know. Also, I just want to thank you guys for considering this is a pretty big, dense document. I know it took a long time to read it, and we really appreciate the feedback. Anything we can do to make this, we spent a lot of money on this plan at the end of the day, and we want to make it good. So
I appreciate
I think
that.
we can get there pretty quick.
Yep.
Well, thanks for bringing this to us and yeah, and giving us a chance to man. If that's everything, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
I wanted to also thank the SE Group and the town staff for all the hard work that they put on that. It's clearly not done. We're going to have to do some revisions on a few of these things. We're going to work hard to try and get this back, but the amount of work, this as much work as it is to read through it, think about how much work it was to write it. So I really appreciate John and Britt and everybody with the SE Group that has put a lot of time and effort into this and is trying to make it reflect Nederland. It's come a long way from what the first document was presented back in October.
Well, in Planning Commission too, you guys have definitely been through the war on this one.
Yeah. Thanks for your work on this, SE Group and Planning Commission. And also just a reminder, if you're interested in going to the public hearing, it will be at the end of the month here, towards the end of the month on February 26th, I think Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
And now if you want to, John is going to talk with us about the Even more uncertain reality of federal funding. Hi,
Well,
John.
Mayor and Board, I just want to tell you before I start, we did get a grant this week, my first official one in Nederland, to sponsor the co-responder, half of it, which is pretty cool. And it's state money, so it's coming one way or the other. So that's great. But this is about federal funding. We have 3 federal grants, which you may know about: the Safer Main Streets grant, the one we call TIPS, which is a Transportation Infrastructure Improvement grant. Both of those are kind of working on the area around Town Hall and on the highway, just to make safer pedestrian crossings, sidewalks, and road improvements there. And then our other federal grant that we have is the Big Springs Egress Project. We were, as you all know, on January 27th, the Office of Management and Budget issued a temporary pause on all federal grants. It hit us pretty hard because we actually are owed reimbursement, and we still have not gotten that reimbursement, even though that pause is over. So what we did is we just immediately talked to our team here. We talked to our funding partners, and we just made sure that we're communicating with JVA, who's the contracted agency on each of the grants. And I think what we're going to have to do is just be very, we're just going to have to watch it very carefully. And if something happens or things change, we're just going to have to pause work and take it on. So there may be things where we have to like briefly pause what we're doing just to make sure that we're not spending town money that we were anticipating having reimbursed. But for now, I think we're in relatively normal operation. I think we'll see these reimbursements we're owed come relatively soon. I wanted to just put a quick information update in here just so you knew that we're really just trying to proactively respond to a very uncertain situation. So, and give you any opportunities for questions. Those are our only programs right now that are affected, is those 3 grants.
All right, is that it?
Yes.
Any clarifying questions for?
One quick question. When you were doing all your outreach particularly about the fact that we're owed reimbursements that are in limbo, part of the outreach, did you reach out to Congressman Neguse and our senators?
I did not, but I should do that. I will do that.
Good suggestion. Thanks. Chris, thanks. Yeah. Cool. Well, any other questions or comments for John on this item? If not, we will move into action land. Our first action of the night is the liquor. Oh, sorry, I just did something weird to my, oh my God.
That's okay.
Sorry,
First action item is the liquor license. Are you okay?
Yeah, I just did something weird to my screen. Go ahead. Can you say it?
Okay. Yep, I'll go ahead. Liquor license hearing, the Mountain Cafe. I believe John, Macy, can you take us on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a script? Oh, there's a liquor board script.
Yeah, this is a formal thing.
Okay.
Quickly, I just want to thank everyone who's here for the hearing. Our applicant is joining us from Nepal this evening, and we have a few people who've stuck with us in the room.
Okay.
A few people have left, but they've rejoined us online. So I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who's joining us for the hearing tonight.
Thanks, Rochelle.
All right, I'll go ahead and open it up. Mayor Billy, is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. I screwed up my document. I'm fixing it, but yes,
No
I
problem.
can hear you.
Okay, I open the public hearing on the application for a new hotel and restaurant liquor license for Rasham Gurung at 121 North Jefferson Street, Nederland, Colorado. The Board of Trustees is sitting as the liquor license authority for the town. The hearing will proceed as follows. 1, the town clerk, acting as the authority's secretary, will present the application details. 2, the applicant will have the opportunity to address the application. 3, the public may provide comments. And 4, the authority will deliberate and take action on the application. I now invite the town clerk to present the application.
The application is for a hotel and restaurant liquor license. All required materials have been reviewed and included in the agenda packet. The application is complete and will be submitted to the state for approval. Key findings. Number 1, notice of this public hearing was posted on site on January 17th, 2025, and published in the Mountaineer newspaper on January 3rd, 2025. Number 2, no liquor license applications have been denied in the town within the past 2 years. Number 3, the proposed location is within the central business district where enclosed retail, eating, and drinking establishments are permitted. Number 4, the nearest public school is approximately 1 mile away. Number 5, the applicant is a member of the LLC that owns the property. Number 6, a current liquor license on the property will expire on February 5th, 2025 at midnight, and the new license will be effective February 6th, 2025. Number 7, the background check found no concerns regarding the applicant's moral character. Number 8, no remodeling or building alterations are planned. The Nederland Fire and Police Departments have approved the site layout.
Thank you, Macy. Does anyone have any questions for the town clerk regarding the application? Okay.
I can jump back on. I got my documents working. Sorry about that. While the town has determined the relevant neighborhood to be within the town boundaries, does anyone object to this determination? So I'll now invite the applicant or their representatives to present their case. So Rasham and your team.
I'm here.
So
Rashawn, if you just want to give a quick overview of
Yes.
why you're seeking this license.
Yes.
Rasham, can you please explain to the board why you are seeking this liquor license for your new restaurant?
I wanna serve the beer, wine, needs, and with the food. Yeah.
That's a very good reason, by the way.
yes, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Anyone else is there someone else from your team here? Macy, is there someone else with the applicant's team? Okay.
They would only like to participate only if it's required. So
No,
they
no.
won't receive-
No, I'm good. No, I just want to make sure that they feel like they've completed their presentation.
Do you have anything to
Does
add?
anyone does the
Brittany's-
authority?
The
Oh, go ahead.
business manager is going to add something.
Is she still on?
I'm still on, yeah.
There we are. Wow. I think Rashawn was straight to the point that we just want to be able to serve the community beer, wine, liquor, with food and great service, great atmosphere, and do so in a responsible way. That's our ultimate goal. Bring fun to the community. Sustainable. Thank you.
Sustainable fun.
Thank you. Does the authority have any questions for the applicant or the representative?
It's perfectly said. Perfectly said. Yeah.
Any questions for the
Authority, that would be trustees. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
I'm getting a bunch of no questions.
Okay.
Head.
Well, so we can now move on to public comment. I'll just, since I'm offline, I can look at folks. Does anyone online have a public comment? If so, raise your hand or start talking.
Anyone who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application?
And please state your name, position, and reasoning.
This is Jesse Severs. I'd like to speak in favor of this application.
Is there anything
Can
else?
you guys hear me?
Yes, thanks, Jesse.
Okay. I just want to say quickly, I'm in favor of this application. Rasham is a well-known member of the community. I've known her for many years. She's operated other restaurants in the area successfully for many years, and this location is also successfully ran with a liquor license, and I think this would be a good addition to the community. That's all.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. Any other public comments from folks online? Is anyone in the room?
Is there anyone in the room? We do have a public comment. Oh, boy.
Cool. I know
Hi,
I can't
folks.
see the
Eric
audience.
from Smile, Big Springs. I guess I'm here to comment and testify on behalf of Rasham's moral character, which feels like a very arcane concept, but it is still liquor license law.
Yeah.
I'll just say that when I first moved to town, some of the first bits of community organizing that I got into was the Mountain Forum for Peace. And I came in just at the tail end of a campaign that Rasham Gurung was running to raise money for an ambulance, garage, and potable water storage facility in her hometown village in Nepal, which had just been hit by a massive earthquake. And so I've seen kind of firsthand what Rasham's community building is all about. I think that the spaces that she's developed in town are essentially community centers that are kind of crucial to the operation of Nederland as a town and as a group of people. I've seen so many meetings there that have changed the course of this town, and so many ideas presented around those tables over a cup of chai that I think we wouldn't be the town that we are without the establishments that she's managed to develop and manage and maintain over the years. So that's what I've got to say about Rasham's work in the community, and I'm in favor of you guys awarding her this liquor license.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
I can't see anyone else in the room.
I know our last two commenters worked through some good terms on the annexation ordinance over a cup of chai at Kathmandu. So
It's where the
a good
magic
place
happens.
of deliberation.
Okay, we got nobody else in the room, Mayor Billy.
Okay. Back to my script. Sorry, I've got a new puppy and she's in the background, so I apologize. She's kind of loud. Does the authority have any further questions for the applicant or members of the public? Trustees.
We've got head knowing nods.
Okay.
Oh.
Great. Thank you. We will now deliberate based on the following criteria and the testimony heard from the town clerk, the applicant, and public comment. We just any comments or deliberation on the applicant's moral character?
Sounds like the applicant's moral character is intact, and Kathmandu already has a liquor license. I think there's precedent already stated. We gave it to her once before.
She had two.
Twice. Goodbye and tie.
Speaking in her favor. How do we say anything?
And
else?
she had two ex-trustees speaking in her favor. I mean, how else do we do this other than?
I've also performed a background check and received results from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and there's nothing to be concerned about.
Well, thank you. Clean bill of health.
Amazing. None of us had to go through background checks, did we?
If you want a liquor license.
I have, but not for this.
Okay, except for occasions, Trustee Ty does. Okay, the suitability of the premises. It seems suitable.
good.
It's had liquor licenses in there.
Suitable.
I've been in there. It's very beautiful.
It has
I just
served
wanted to say
alcohol
that.
in the past.
We
Got a great
needed-
spot for a beer tap.
We needed a little levity tonight. The needs and the desires for an additional liquor outlet. Hell yeah.
Yes.
Becoming more necessary by the day.
Hour.
And the last one, whether existing liquor outlets are sufficient to meet demand.
They are not sufficient to meet the entire demand.
That's pretty subjective, but
Yeah,
I'd say
that is subjective.
trustees. Yeah, the trustees in the room are nodding as in they're not sufficient to meet demand.
Yes, nuts.
So with that, I'm just looking at the script. I don't know if what y'all see for a name, but I'm ready. We're ready for a motion.
Just go.
I move to approve Resolution 2025-01, a resolution of the Netherlands Local Liquor Licensing Authority granting the application for a new hotel and restaurant liquor license for RBM LLC, doing business as the Mountain Cafe at 121 North Jefferson Street, Nederland, Colorado, 80466.
All right, second.
Thank you. And I would just like to note for the record that the resolution, the language in there appears that the license will be issued in the name of the LLC. We are going to issue the license in the name of the applicant to Rasham, who is a proven member of that LLC.
And we'll correct the resolution.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, for purposes, do you need me to restate this one that's in here?
No,
It's okay. Okay.
thank you all.
Okay.
You ready for me, Billy?
Yeah, real quick on the script, and I apologize, it has these 3 bullets that come after the motion. Jennifer, do they need to be?
Mayor Billy, we're fine.
Okay, great.
All right. Trustee
ahead.
Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Trustee Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. The motion's approved. I just want to reiterate that there's an active license at the premises until February 5th at midnight. And so this application will be approved locally and sent to the state for their approval on February 6th.
Great.
So when can we get Bloody Marys?
Once the state approves their license, so that could take a couple weeks to a couple months.
Okay.
Oh, is that realistic? It's that big of a weight and that big of a range, Macy?
Yes, I have had good luck recently, so it might take a few weeks to a month.
Please announce
Okay.
on Facebook. Okay. That's when we just want to know. So, all right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Rasham.
Thank you, everyone, trustee and mayor. I really appreciate it. Messi, I really appreciate it. I will see you 3 weeks. Thank you.
We'll see you in 3 weeks. Have a nice time over there.
Thank you.
Attorney Madsen?
I just want to jump in for 2 things. One is I am not sure. I think that Molly is still online. Molly, can you turn on your screen if you're still there? Okay, so that's Molly Schultz. She assisted Macy on this application. Molly is in my office, and maybe sometime I'll bring up Molly here and you all will get to meet her, but I wanted to thank her for all of her work on this application and helping out with the process. And she got to sit through a liquor hearing with the town of Nederland.
You're welcome.
And the other thing I want to mention, while it's all fresh in your minds, is that this process is not necessary. The state really in 2024 adopted some new changes in the state statute so that the town clerk can process new liquor license applications and can approve new liquor license applications, and we wouldn't need to have this hearing. The reason we have to have the hearing is because of Netherlands code. And so,
What chapter?
so if you would like to make a change, we could change the code so that these applications are approved by the clerk. We would always put in something in there that if the town clerk felt that there was a reason for a public hearing, that it could be put before the liquor licensing authority. But it just would probably streamline the process and make it simpler.
That sounds like a great
I'm seeing
idea.
a lot. I'm seeing more than 4 nods.
Yeah, I think we got like
Yes, please.
an entire board. I suspect where you would want to bring something like that is if, maybe something was flagged in the background check, or you want the body to deliberate on it and not put that to your shoulders.
Yes, I have had a situation like that previously. And so we were deliberating that. I ended up meeting with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, and so that kind of like took place like after their approval of it. We decided that it was okay to move forward administratively without the hearing. That was for a transfer. Transfers are different. There's also been like a circumstance of a business coming to town that operated in a neighboring community who we received information from the clerk and the mayor, and we performed core requests to get information. And so that would have been an appropriate circumstance to have a hearing.
If it had made it that far.
It was a transfer.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a great idea. It sounds like we've got support, Mayor Billy and Tanya. So if that could be our checklist of things to remedy, that would be
Yeah,
amazing.
you guys are like satisfied with our investigation and the results that were produced and presented to you. It's the same process I follow. I really also want to thank Molly. I'm doing a lot of really complex liquor stuff, and so she's been really helpful. Thank you, Molly.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate your work. So with that, we will move on to our second action item in the evening, consideration of an emergency ordinance to approve the Teens Inc. lease for the Old Town Shops site. Jonathan.
Well, Mayor and Board, in October of 2023, you were presented with a request from Teens Inc. to develop a new private child care center on the Old Town Shop lot, which is located at 750 West 5th Street. Previously, it had the Public Works shop on it, and it's been now vacant since 2017, I believe. At that meeting, you directed staff to obtain appraisals for the property, explore vacating 5th Street right-of-way to create a larger lot, to amend the zoning code to allow private child care centers as a special review use on public zoned property, and to draft a ground lease to define the terms of use. Subsequent progress included amendments to the zoning code and approval of a special review use through Ordinance 859 in February of 2024, allowing teens to operate a child care facility on the site. There was a referendum of that ordinance, and in July 2024, the electorate overwhelmingly affirmed the board's decision to allow the project. The board then approved Ordinance 865 to vacate the 5th Street right-of-way, consolidating those parcels to support the development. In the meantime, the Teens Inc. team has been working on some environmental testing on the site just to confirm that there's no hazardous materials left over from when it was the Old Town Shop site. We are fairly confident that there are no hazardous materials at this point. And so we are ready to present the terms of a proposed ground lease with Teens Inc. to facilitate the development of that child care center. My staff report outlines some of the highlights from the lease. The term of the lease would be for 99 years. Termination can be basically, it could be terminated prior to construction without penalty. It would include termination if construction is not completed by 2027s, and there would be options for them to have 6-month or extensions to the lease in that case. Rental payments will be $1 a year, and that will start upon commencement of construction. Teens Inc. is going to be responsible for constructing an approximately 8,600 square foot childcare facility and related facilities. They will own the improvements on the lot. However, we may have the option to purchase them or require removal at lease termination. Teens must secure all permits, financing, and a performance bond before starting construction. And that performance bond will just ensure that we're not left with a partially completed project or something that doesn't meet the town's standards, I guess. On environmental considerations, we have done significant testing to ensure that there's no hazardous materials on site, and the town would be responsible for addressing any pre-existing environmental issues if so. In terms of maintenance and utilities, Teens is responsible to maintain the property in good working order. They are responsible for all utility costs during the lease term. They are responsible for paying all building fees, all utility plant investment fees, and any other associated costs related to construction and operation. The use that is permitted is a child care center and related activities, and that is outlined in that special review use agreement that you guys did earlier last year. Teens would have a right of first refusal to purchase the property if the town does decide to sell it during the lease term. And Teens is required to have insurance for the property, naming the town as additional insured. My staff report has 2 motions in it, and I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor Billy, do you want me, are you there?
Yeah, any clarifying questions for John? Or Town Administrator Kane? Trying to be all formal and stuff.
Should we call you Mayor Giblin?
No.
Okay, well then. I know.
I know, I'm getting formal. Any clarifying questions for John?
If any of these lease agreement terms were wanting to be changed sometime during the next 99 years, what would be involved? Like, I'm thinking the top of mind, like permitted use, you know, say 40 years from now, somebody's like, oh, actually, we want to do something else there. What's involved in that?
So I believe, and I have to look at this, but I believe that the parties can amend the lease and by in writing. So the parties can get together and amend the lease in writing.
Mutual agreement.
Yes, there is a specific section that talks about use. And it may be that if I'd have to look at it more closely, but to that specific question, if the special review use is amended through the town's planning process, then it would apply to this lease. I think that might be true, but I'd have to look more closely. I mean, we've been working on this for a long time and have gone back and forth. And if those are not provisions that I've looked at closely, right, you know, in the last month or so.
But at least for now, especially the use, the SRU could only be changed through some sort of planning commission change or by some other
Correct.
town, BOT amendment.
Yep. We have specific regulations related to amendments of special review uses.
Clarifying question for town staff. Well, first, thank you for getting all the things that have been talked about in this lease. It seemed to all be in there, my reading, but I'm just a little unclear. Why is it an emergency?
Childcare is a public health, a public good, I guess, is part of it. The other thing is that there's some time sensitivity here to try to allow them to continue their funding and get all the funding that they need to do this project and to make sure that they're moving forward in a practical manner. And so I think that's really the primary motivation here.
Yeah, I think we said in the past too, that sometimes the emergency is just the need for time urgency. It's not necessarily an emergency in the usual way of thinking about the word. But
The other thing too is that, one of the things is that this ordinance will be effective immediately. So there can be no right of referendum on this as an emergency ordinance. And the town has already voted on this. And so the thought is, let's just get this taken care of. And so teens can move forward with their
So there's an
process.
indication that if we were to do it as a normal ordinance, do you
take
think it would be
30
challenged?
It could be.
And it would take 30 days to go into
Right.
effect.
Yeah, right.
And there could still be then another, requirement for a vote.
If somebody were to pursue it, knowing the results of that last referendum, which, as you said, were pretty directed.
Correct.
Some clarifying questions from letters that we've had written into us. There was always a question around the square footage, approximately 600, but that is for the building envelope, so to speak, like the outside structures of the building, correct? And can you just remind everyone of what the actual square footage of that plot is?
I want to say, Britt, do you remember off the top of your head? It's like close to 10,000, I think, right?
I am looking right now.
Oh, 26,000. Okay.
But
The lot, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm asking about the overall square footage of the lot. And that the building here being proposed at 8,600 isn't half of that, if it's
Yeah.
26.
But you
If
were
it's-
saying 8,600 as the building footprint or actual total square footage?
Building.
Well, it's the same in this case because it's a
Right, like
one-story
whatever
building.
they call that, floor area ratio, whatever, like.
It's the same in this case because it's a one-story building, but not
Right.
really as designed.
There's a whole bunch of you get these floor area calculations that,
No,
are
just
very,
the
very,
footprint.
very
Just the
particular.
footprint.
Don't include stairwells.
That's,
and don't
this
include-
is
considered in the
just says
special
a
review.
building of 8,600 square feet. Doesn't say anything about footprint. It says building of 8,600 square feet.
That's what I'm
Right.
clarifying. That's what I'm asking about and clarifying is that, or is this what we're talking about? Is that that's the footprint? And
That is my understanding, and it could also be potentially less. They haven't come in for building permits yet, and so that's what, we still need to do as part of this process is go through the building permit phase.
okay, so there's the potential that it could still be multi-story, and then the footprint is much less. But we're saying even at its maximum, it's 8,600 could be potentially of a building footprint, and that doesn't. That takes up maybe a third of the overall lot. Are we correct on the 26,000?
Yeah, it's stated 26,230, but the street was vacated, so there will be an additional, it's just not recorded through the property viewer, yeah.
Yeah, so just, I guess, so that we're sort of all just got it in our minds, it'll be even less than a third with the Fifth Street being vacated. Okay, thank you for that clarification. One of the other questions that was written in, and this potential just for now to clarify, the question was, where's a traffic plan, noise, dust studies? The clarification is, we're going through the lease, those things come later.
Yeah, the building permit process hasn't been completed yet.
Right.
They have not submitted for permits yet. We've kind of had some initial conversations about what utilities look like and things like that, but not more extensive. We had one meeting with Safe Built and we talked about fixtures. That was it.
Okay.
And then I think just one other thing to clarify based on the comments we got in our emails. There are places in the lease where it says approximately 8,600 square feet, but it does clearly say that the building will not exceed 8,600
Right.
square feet on page 8, just for anybody tuning in.
Other clarifying
also,
questions?
I just want to make sure I'm reading through it, trying to see if I could find if it does say, but I don't see it off the top by a quick scan, is the area of Fifth Street that is vacated can't be built on. Is that correct? It's just there as parking, traffic, it can't be, that part can't be built on? Is that?
I don't know that, I don't think that's, okay, why are you asking that question? Because your understanding is that it can't be built on?
That was my understanding when we did the vacation, but I could be misremembering.
We did not talk about that, but it would need setbacks and floodplain things like that. There would be analysis like that. And so there's all of those things that go into the building permit process. Is that what you were going to say? Or
Oh, I was going to say it's now a part of the whole plat and the whole property, but it is public, so there's no setbacks.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, they are planning to do setbacks. They're not building the full footprint.
Yeah.
So I should add that before that becomes anything.
Yeah, we just got 10 emails on it. Thank you. No. But going to that, because one of the other concerns or one of the other questions was around setbacks around the creek. And I was trying to look in code and I don't know that we have anything, or maybe it is specified.
it's in the floodplain regulation.
It's in the flood. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but again, all of that is specified in terms of the setbacks and
We are going to
whatnot.
do an additional review of this project through JVA, through
Okay.
our civil engineers for the site plan and everything, just because it is town-owned property. So it will go through a JV, well, first it'll go through town staff, then we'll go through JVA review and safe built review. And that will be all kind of the civil
Engineering,
things generally. And then we'll look at, all the plans from that perspective as well.
Okay. Yeah. So for folks who have either written in or have just wondered, all that gets dealt with through the actual building permit process. But there are setbacks through the floodplain. So. Any other clarifying questions?
Could I go back and address Trustee Miller's question about the use?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that is talked about in section 2.03, and it says that teams shall use the property as permitted in the SRU agreement, which includes following uses: for completion of the improvements, operation of child care center and facility, for child care purposes, as further agreed by the parties in writing. And so the parties can agree in writing to other uses, town and teens.
Thank you. We're good here in the room in terms of clarifying questions. Billy, if you and
Cool.
Tanya want.
Yeah, Tanya, you have any clarifying questions before we do
No.
public comment? Okay.
No.
We'll go to public comment. We'll go online first. Anyone online have a public comment regarding this emergency ordinance and the lease with Teens Inc. about the Old Town Shop site? No one online? Okay, I'm out in the room.
Yep. Let's see. Anybody in the room have a public? Come on up, May. Oh,
good. Well, for one thing, this seems rather rushed. The full packet hasn't been available today. I know I sent my letter in on time to be included. I never saw it on the packet. I haven't gotten any response from any trustee for the little map and comments that I made. I did make the little map with the suggested placement of the building. When we were looking at the map on the comp plan of our parks and open spaces, that Dyer's town shop site's still a little green area. And if you look at the map, you'll see that's actually an important part of our green grid, and it is Creekside. When I called early childhood education people in Denver about how big does it have to be and so on, and said they were considering a 8,000 square foot building, the lady actually asked me, are you building a rec center there? Why so big? I think the classroom size and the ancillary stuff would be more along the lines of 5,000, which was closer to what they originally proposed. The advantages of a two-story building is a reduced footprint. If you do find pocket contaminants, the town's going to be holding the bag for very expensive mitigation. The bigger the footprint, the bigger the mitigation. Same thing with runoff and so forth. Black Elk once said, when you want to help someone, if you lean over too far, you could fall over on them and hurt yourself and them. I think it's probably not a good idea to bring a building up close to the water the way they had in the SRU projection. That's going to become icy in winter and a place for drunks to go on summer nights because it'll be protected. And then very briefly, so I'd like for you people to consider, why do we have to have an 8,000, why does some little kids need a building the size of a fire station where we have engines, fire trucks, water trucks, ambulances parked? Why do we need all that? When I go to the teen center, it just seems empty most of the time, wasted space. My other question related to the lease assignment and possible sale by Teens Inc. I have a nonprofit, and when I formed it, you have to designate as a nonprofit who you're going to give your assets to in the event that your nonprofit disbands. So I'm just wondering, did I read that right about the lease? That Teens Inc. can assign it or sell the property without town review? And all of the letters that I saw going into you, none of which I saw in the packet, I think brought up some very interesting points and go to the issue of this really warrants.
We're at 3 minutes, just so you know.
This is like a 99-year marriage. And I think we need to spend more time going over the lease and as if we were just planning the flowers for the event, but actually the nitty gritty of it. Now, that's what we were promised as a neighbor. Thank you.
Thanks, May.
Thanks,
Anyone
May.
else inside in the? Okay, we've got one, Mayor Billy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Stephen LaFavre. I'm Executive Director of Teens Inc. And first want to definitely thank Attorney Madsen and John and Britt for their work on this. It has been quite a process. And I think we all, at least we've come to a spot where we feel really good about the lease and work through a lot of issues. So just relating specifically to the building, it's 3/4 of an acre, which is about 32,000 square feet. The size of the building. We are really close to, and it is our hope to break ground in April. We have some work to do, for sure, fundraising, and getting to a point of doing that. But that's our hope. And we absolutely would not be able to do that with this being an emergency, with this not being an emergency ordinance. I guarantee that would take the probability down to zero, I think, with the timetable that we have with permits and stuff like that. So 8,600 square foot, single story building. That's what it is. And that's what it is.
Okay, single story.
It is a single story,
Okay.
8,600 square foot building, not even 8,600 square foot building.
Okay.
Guaranteed, no matter what's being said, that we are that far along in the planning and process, and we've stayed in contact with folks. Our hope that the planning is not the limiting factor in us breaking ground. What's cool is learning about the comp plan is this actually fits really well, especially with economic development and providing a new business in town. Fits perfectly, because it will employ 14 to 18 people. We cannot shave this building a square foot without impacting programming. Every single part of this building is dictated by licensing. You can't take a 500 square foot classroom and make it 499 square feet and serve the same amount of kids. It's impossible. You will not be allowed, and it does not make sense, in our financial models to cut this building, and it doesn't make sense to serve the community to cut this building a square foot more. So, thanks.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Anyone else in the room? We've got one.
Hi, Eric Coombs, Ismail, Big Springs. I know that I voted for this when it came to the Board of Trustees in the past. I voted for it again as a citizen of the town in the referendum. I really do appreciate all the work that went into making that referendum happen. I know that this is not a universally popular project, and I know that it's numerically popular, but sometimes numbers erase people, right? So in some sense, I just wanted to point out that I think we should give some grace to the community that this project might be built in and to their concerns, and hopefully that we look towards mitigating that in the future wherever possible and helping the Dyers neighborhood out. I'm not saying do anything to modify this project. I think the project is good. I think it's solid. I think it should move forward. And I also think emergency is just a word. I love an emergency ordinance. I don't think it's the big deal that it's been made out to be. But that being said, I do think that it's important not to gloat. It's important not to kind of lord this over the Dyers Addition neighborhood. I think that those folks are sacrificing a lot, whether against their will or otherwise. And it's important that we kind of come together around them and try to support them, even though we're going to do this. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
That's nobody else in the room, Mayor Billy.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the comments. With that, and no one online, so with that, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
A couple of things to answer your question, May, on, what, because you had asked a question at the end, like, can the Teens Inc. actually modify the lease? It says it can, but not without the expressed written consent of the town of Nederland. So they can't just go and do that by themselves. They have to do it. Yeah, so it is explicitly stated in that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I don't know, and you had made the point, like, May, if there was something environmental there, that the town of Nederland would have to pay that burden. I probably see that as, it doesn't matter what would be going there, we'd probably have to pay that burden anyway, whether it was going to be a park or a childcare facility or anything, whatever that new use might be, we might have to do that. Yeah, and so just so everyone else online can hear, May said the more that you disturb the soil, the more that there's potentially environmental things that might happen. So, yeah. And let me see if there was anything else in terms of discussion points. There was a question, and I think it's worthy of clarifying for the population or for our citizens. This question of, property tax and sales tax. And John, I was wondering if there's something that you could speak to that.
On us receiving property tax and sales tax?
Yeah.
There's really no, I guess the question of sales tax is what would be generated at this property, and I don't think there's any activities that would generate sales tax. It is a public parcel, and so we would be giving ourselves property tax. So I think that's another problem here. But we did, as I noted in my staff report, they are paying their fees. They're paying they're responsible for all of those things that they would normally get. But this is there just wouldn't be any property tax or sales tax generated from public.
And part of the clarification point has actually not so much to do with the fact that they're a nonprofit. It's the fact that it's a publicly owned parcel of land, and we don't pay property tax anyway.
Right.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear amongst folks.
Would that be true even if we put housing there, it was public housing on our public land?
Yes.
Yep. Because we own it.
Yeah, I just wanted that question answered out loud. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, that was all my clarifying things. Anyone else?
Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to make a comment just because I know, I've got a bit of a history with this. Prior to being on this board, I was, I am a resident of the Dyers neighborhood, and prior to being on this board, I was part of the effort for the referendum. But I just want to state that I am, totally in support of this project. It's not ideal. I still think it should be public housing. People have spoken differently. We're moving forward with this. You can put our personal opinions aside working on this board sometimes. But I still do struggle, and I know Eric very clearly, saying emergency just being a word. I kind of do struggle still with this being an emergency ordinance because of some of the things are brought up that, we saw this lease for the first time Friday. Recently, the public hasn't seen it. It was stated that one of the reasons they want to do emergency is specifically to subrogate the rights of the populace. If it was an ordinance, there could be another effort. There could be another referendum. I think it's incredibly unlikely.
Yeah.
People saw how it went. Why would they do that? But just to make an emergency ordinance specifically to take away the rights of all the residents of Nederland to be able to challenge one of our decisions, I struggle with. And so I'm fully in support of this. If this would be a non-emergency ordinance, I'd totally vote for it. But as an emergency ordinance, I have to vote against.
Is there anything in the lease, just to clarify, is there anything in the lease that gives you, grief or anything in terms of the terms that are in the lease? That are in the lease?
I could say something about the sizing and things like that, but I'm not a childcare professional, so I can't speak to what Stephen said about this being the necessary size.
Due to licensing?
Due to licensing requirements. I don't know those details. Haven't dug into it. I trust him on that this is the size of the facility. I think that a lot of those questions we can then answer through the building process, and actually it comes to another thing. The building process hasn't started. There isn't that pressure, they're not trying. So, yeah. But to answer your question, the lease itself, very, very good.
I do want to clarify too. I think that it was important to mention related to the right of referendum, but that's not really the reason. I mean, the reason too is that teens needs to get going. If they want to break ground in April, they need to get going. We almost had this done in December. There wasn't a full board in December. There wasn't a full, and then we had some other issues come up. And so it's just, we've kept pushing this off. And so that's the other reason for the emergency ordinance. It's not specifically just the right of referendum. And I will say too that it does have to be an ordinance because that's required by state law.
Absolutely.
Tanya.
Oh, hi.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I want to say that, I respect Chris's opinion about the emergency ordinance. I had a similar issue with that in the last meeting with the natural medicine. I didn't feel like it was an emergency and that it could wait 30 days. I think with this, though, waiting 30 days for teens to really start developing their plan and getting all the permitting done so that they can break ground, knowing how slow the process can be with permitting and plan of development and everything, I don't think there is a minute to waste. Our build season is pretty short in Netherlands, so it is important they get started in April so that by winter, ideally they could be framed in. I don't know what their plan is, but that's what I would think. So I don't think it has much to do with the referendum and more about that 30 days is really going to make it difficult to get the permitting process done in time to start building for summer. That's just my take, but I do respect the idea about emergency because I was definitely on the fence, not on the fence. I was very sure that it was not an emergency at our last meeting. This one though, I feel differently. So that's beauty. But anyway, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Tanya. Maybe we just go around thoughts, decisions. Ty?
Thoughts and let us know which way you're leaning, please.
You have to, yeah.
Okay. No, I do.
He's like, pass. I'm like,
good.
no.
I'm good.
I'm like, no, you don't get a pass on this.
I do. I agree almost wholeheartedly with what Tanya said. I do feel like this is an emergency. Our build season is short. I build things. I don't work outside in the winter. It's terrible. So I am in agreement that this is an emergency situation.
Okay. Luke?
Yeah, I think, given that we've already delayed this process for a long time, I mean, the need was pretty urgent when we first started, and we delayed a long time to do the referendum and have a vote, and now it's even more urgent than it was before. And so it seems like, if anything, this is the best we can do to try to make up for lost time. So, in full support.
Tierney.
I agree. Chris, I also respect your thoughts as well, just as Tanya mentioned. But I think that the ordinance really lays out why this is an emergency, and it's just the reasons that everyone just articulated. So it's there, it's written down as to why this is an urgent need and how teens could lose out on critical funding and might not be able to break ground. So I think that that's there, and I think it's been articulated, and I agree it's an emergency. And I don't see any issues with the lease. I hear the concerns that we've heard from the community, but I'm hopeful that at least some of the things that we clarified today I hope that they allay some concerns. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, great, thank you. And I would say I'm also a fan of a good emergency ordinance if it, and it makes sense. And I think in this situation, agreeing that it makes sense. So that's everyone in the room. Mayor Billy.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I know that, moratorium and emergency kind of, make people, it just seems like a bigger thing than it should be at times. But I think I've come to learn that I like that we have the ability to use these tools. And when I think of them, it's really just about time urgency. Frankly, I hadn't even thought about the referendum side. It's really just knowing. I guess I have seen copies of this lease along the way, so I've seen how it's been going back and forth and working and being worked and reworked and what the whole time the clock's been ticking on our building season and April hope to break ground. So it is urgent for me from a time perspective that, this thing has already been held up for a lot of good reasons that were out of teams in control and our control, but now is to a place where we can move ahead with it. So that's why I think the emergency ordinance makes sense. And it's been clear that the town, has voted for this and the board has voted for this. And, I think it's too big, and I don't agree that it has to be this big for 61 kids. I mean, the other one has about 20 kids and it's about, a quarter of the size. So I think it's too big. It needs to be smaller. Save yourself some money and, put it towards the PIF fee and not save it, but have to raise less. I feel like it's being overbuilt and it could be smaller. And I feel strongly about that. I really appreciate May's pleasant and clear diagram. Whether specifically would go that kind of a footprint, I do personally think it needs to be smaller. But I think as for approving the lease for now in these conditions, I'm a yes vote.
My very limited understanding is that when you throw a 0 to 2-year-old in there, population, that changes things dramatically.
Yeah, but I've talked over with Stephen directly, and there's some storage rooms that are, I just feel like, and even just if it's going to be that footprint, make it, short and to the point. No bling.
Mayor Billy, Stephen has asked if he can make one last comment. Are you open to that?
Sure.
Okay. Regarding the emergency, the emergency is not the build. The reason why April is so critical to us is not because of the building season. It's because of the end time. With universal pre-K funding, you have to hit a certain amount of hours per child for every 4-year-old. So if we build and we start building in June, 14 months gets us to August, 2 months of licensing gets us to November. We can't serve 4-year-olds, which get 15 hours of free preschool until the following year. So then
so it's really school year based.
It's school year based is more of the emergency than building season. So I just want to point that out. And then maybe the building size is a different question, but I'll happy to talk more about that. And you need to have good teachers, and every single preschool you meet, every single teacher, every single administrator will say we need more storage. And I'm not saying this is not like 4,000 square feet of storage, but there are closets for each classroom.
Yeah.
There is a teacher room because teachers do plan even at those levels. We want teachers to feel good about where they work. And there's a small commercial kitchen because part of our equity effort is to provide food for every child. Other than that, we have scaled down from, we just shaved $600,000 off of our budget in the last 2 weeks by value engineering this building. So I appreciate like the thoughts of like just cut size. We cannot cut size and serve the community. We have over 80 children on the wait list now. So those are the reasons for the emergency. It's not the building season. Our builders can build during the winter, and they will. They'll do it. But yes, the goal is to have it enclosed by mid-November, because that makes the most economic sense.
Got it.
To get it running.
All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
Thanks. I have a question, Steve. Why don't you stay up there? So this is something that I heard a little bit ago, and you seem to not think it was a thing, so I want to have you kind of explain it to us. So if we get, and correct me if I'm getting any of these facts a little confused, but if we go with worthy cause money, that's county, right?
Worthy cause money is county, correct.
Okay, now isn't there a condition in there that they could take ownership of the property?
No, that's the next challenge we have is ensuring that we have a leasehold deed of trust, that the county is very open. They want us to give them what we need. And when I say we, I mean the town. And well, the town and Teens Inc., in order to access those funds.
And what specifically is that? I don't know that.
Worthy cause funds are a tax-derived Boulder County funding effort for capital efforts for human services.
Okay, but when you were talking about we all giving them what they want,
so it's better for you, Attorney
So
Madsen, to explain this.
They will, the way the program's funded is typically the program receiving the funds is the property owner, but that's not the case here. The situation here is that Teens has a lease agreement. So instead of getting a deed of trust on the property related to the money that's been given through the grant, deed of trust would be like your mortgage on your house. They will be given a leasehold deed of trust, meaning that if Teens doesn't pay or doesn't continue
to
with
operate
the operations as a child care center, then the county can come in and step into the lease.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
So the other thing with the emergency part is to bring it down. If we do not break ground this year, in 2025 in April, which there's potential, we will not break ground until April 2026. So it's taking those, and there's still no other options in the region. So
yeah,
well,
the emergency is about serving the community and the public good for the community.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 872, approving a ground lease with Teens Incorporated, declaring an emergency and providing an immediate effective date.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? And we need a 3/4 majority, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay. Need 6 votes. Go ahead, Macy.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Larson,
No.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is approved.
Motion passes. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate that. Thanks for being here tonight, everyone involved with Teens Inc. And so we have one more discussion item. John, any kind of ETA before we make a motion to extend? Because can you do this in 8 minutes?
Cass, I think you can.
Leaving time for public comment on non-agenda items?
I think I can do that.
Okay. Can you, or do you need a few minutes? I can make a motion for a few more minutes.
Definitely.
Just speak real closely into the mic.
Oh,
I don't think
okay.
you hear you. Yeah,
Oh.
she's gonna give it a try.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sound good.
So I'm looking for direction on a concept paper for a renewable energy grant for the wastewater treatment plant site. And I'm basically asking if the board supports a draft of a concept paper. So I would begin working on a draft for this energy improvements in rural and remote areas.
This meeting's over in 5 minutes. Okay.
Billy, I think your mic's on.
All right, I'm gonna go to bed. Good night, love you guys.
Billy, your mic's on.
So I'm looking to draft this concept paper for this grant to explore a renewable energy project, including a microgrid at the wastewater treatment plant site. And this would strengthen our electrical infrastructure as well as make a crucial town service more resilient by providing a backup system and have it running on renewable energy. The concept paper is the first step in the application process, so I would be bringing this back to you at the next meeting before the deadline at the end of February. So this is just to start working on the draft, to use staff time for that. We would match with the LOMA grant, and we would only move forward with an application if we receive funding through the LOMA grant. Yeah, so to reiterate, I just want to know if I should start working on a draft for this concept paper for this grant.
The other thing is the funding's paused right now, and so we just want to make sure we're prepared if we get the opportunity. And it has the free service from the free preference. Oh, what is it? The
technical assistance from National Renewable Energy Lab. And even if this grant doesn't exist in a month, I think making a plan for a microgrid at the wastewater treatment plant is not a bad idea in general, and so this would give us the opportunity to start exploring that.
A clarifying question. I'm assuming Andrew is in full support of this, or?
Yeah, he's involved in the process. We haven't quite figured out what the scope of the project is yet, and he'd be involved. And the next step would be working with Cass and myself and Britt just to kind of work on that part so that we could finish the concept.
And mostly, I just want to make sure, because he was very rightly so when we were talking about the whole biosolids thing. He was just like, wait, pause. Not a very helpful thing right now, even though it fit very well within our sustainability goals. And so I'm just sort of checking. I mean, it seems obvious, but I don't want to make that assumption because he would know best.
Yeah, there are some alternate sites that could happen, like for instance, maybe by Wild Bear or like another area in town where we could have a microgrid. And so I think that this is one of the SAB goals, is to do it at the wastewater treatment facility. And so I think what we've kind of determined is we want to work with Andrew, make sure it works, because obviously they have diesel generator backups as well.
Yeah.
And so there's other things that could happen here with this grant funding. And I think that what we need to do is determine whether or not the project really makes sense. And that's what the concept paper would do. We would also bring back any potential application to you, so you would see that before.
I think it's important to note the reason Cass really started looking into this is they want to do solar. And so we were thinking about what more can we do to get like grant funding, and explaining to Andrew like how this works. So he's been a part of it so far and on these kind of like high level calls, but we just thought, could we, do kill one bird with two stones? Well, I don't know what the saying is,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean.
Words, but
Yep,
that's okay.
I do that all the time. But anyways, yeah, so they were already exploring this, and Cass was like, well, this would be great if we could also like do this. So that's really how this kind of came about. And he was interested.
Okay.
So that's where we're at.
It could serve Teens Inc. down there too, potentially. And so there's maybe broader conversations that need to be had.
And so does this grant only allow us to go to one site? Like it's one?
I don't believe it's limited to one site, but that's just what we had been exploring because of the solar option that Andrew had mentioned to me before. So we could consider other sites, including extending the microgrid to downtown, but it really what matters is how much space there is for the renewable energy, and what kinds of renewable energy and how much capacity that would provide.
Yeah, I mean, going back to this idea of microgrids, there's some critical infrastructure that we have that just goes down every single time. And so, I mean, as you're exploring, it might be worth exploring a little bit more broadly, because the elementary school has a generator, but I feel like it doesn't always work.
No, I think we had a problem.
I don't think it can do. I don't think it can cover
Splitter.
the whole load. That's the problem.
Yeah, it won't.
Yeah, you're saying, Billy, the existing generator can't carry the whole load.
No.
Correct. If you know, sometimes Caleb will say, with you know, they've got partial. You know, they can turn on some things, but not everything.
Right. So things like our elementary school and like the schools, I would also be interested in seeing what we can do with that.
In that vein, one of the sites that I talked to Andrew about is the Hilltop Water Station, which has both a ton of space and a ton of solar exposure. So that might be a really good site for something.
All right. And we're at 9:59.
Motion to adjourn.
Public comment on non-agenda items.
Can't do that.
No, actually, wait. We got to do public comments on this and direction, right?
No, it's a discussion item, right?
It's a discussion item.
Yes, correct. Therefore, I'm going to make a motion for a 5-minute extension. We have to do public comment and discussion items. 5 minutes.
All right, Mayor
What's that?
Billy made a motion for extension. Is there a second?
Second.
If we can do this, we got to do public comment for this as well as non-agenda. Okay, go ahead, Macy.
Mayor Billy?
Yep.
Trustee Maris?
Yes.
Trustee Ty?
Yes.
Trustee Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
And Trustee Miller?
No.
Good job.
You
Moving
did
on.
it
Good
just
job,
for
good job.
fun.
Next. Okay, go ahead. Public comment on this item. Does anyone in the public have a comment on this discussion item?
Do you have a Okay. I thought you said you were going to have one.
Come on.
Oh, a non-agenda. Oh, okay. Gotcha. No, nobody in the room, Mayor Billy. And I think it's just the 4 of us left online. So.
Okay, with that, sorry, I've been talking. I apologize. I was muted. Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and bring it back. What other direction do you need from us, Cass? What direction do you need from us?
Just to go ahead if I should start drafting the concept paper for this and then bring it back to you at the next meeting.
A nod of 4 is needed. I'm nodding.
I'm nodding.
Absolutely.
Nod.
You have legitimate nods.
Thank
Really
you.
quickly, you guys are comfortable if we explore those alternate sites?
Please.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I would say shoot for the sky on this one. I think it'd be
Yeah, I would
it's a
just
great idea.
do it anyways.
What? Any other guidance you need from us, John or Cass?
No, thank you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll go public comment and non-agenda item. You have 3 minutes.
We do. Yep.
Well,
and we
come
can set
on up. There's no one online.
Eric Coombs is Mile, Big Springs. Since it was brought up, I think Trustee Miller brought it up. I thought I might as well, and we already brought this up to ProSab. I am part of a citizen initiative coming out of the board of Peak to Peak Endurance, which runs a lot of the youth sports programming in town. You probably are familiar with them if you have anything approximating children. But
young people, little people.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. But we are in the early stages of exploring a Western Boulder County Parks and Recreation Special District project. We obviously want this to be done in close collaboration with the town, and I figure I'd give you all an invitation to get in touch if you're interested in talking about what our proposal might end up looking like. We're working closely with town staff. We're going to work with ProSab. We've already gotten ProSab's nod to move forward with the proposal to them. We're going to be working with SAB as well. Of course, we're going to be working with commissioners and with communities outside of Nederland. It's a project bigger than Nederland alone, but Nederland is the center and core of it. So if you have any ideas for what you would like to see in those proposals coming forward, please reach out. Willing to talk about it. And yeah, I think it's pretty exciting.
What do you want us to pay for?
Everything.
What do we want them
No,
to
we'll
pay
pay
for?
We'll pay for the pool, but
Hey,
we
real-
need
real
some
quick.
help on the legal front.
Oh, and here
Ooh, yeah.
comes the brass tacks. You're the shining star over there.
Anyway,
Okay. Yep.
I've said too much.
Yeah, that's all right.
I have a question. Can it rope in any of Northern Gilpin County, or are they really already in a district, the entire county?
They're not, but we do not want to be held up in this project by attempting to bring two boards of commissioners together over what is going to be a complex issue. We figure that North Gilpin could be added to the district at a later date when it's already formed, and we'd be working with only one set of commissioners on that front.
Oh, so this will need to go to Boulder County Commissioners?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's awesome. I'm psyched that y'all are
And
moving
we
ahead.
don't want to go to commissioners or to really anyone higher than this level until at this level we have discussed it and we have kind of a clear path moving forward.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Flagship. With that, any other public comments on the agenda items? You see what I'm pointing at?
We have a motion on the table already to adjourn.
All right, second.
Was that Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second by Mayor Billy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think Larson too.
Oh, just somebody else. Second.
It was a while ago.
I said
It's fine.
second. Someone else
We're
can
doing
have it though.
all out of order anyway.
Yeah, just
Third.
go. Just take a roll.
Third.
We're fine.
Mayor Billy.
Yep.
He says yes.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes, please.
Trustee Corvalon. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee
All
Tanya.
right. Good night.
Yes.
Good night, Tanya.
Good night,
Night.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
Yes.
Trustee Maris.
Yes.
Trustee Larson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned
everyone.
at 10:04 p.m.
Thank you. Flagship of the Rec District. Thanks, everybody.